Welcome to Anime Out of Context, a comedy review show where a man completely immersed in anime culture torments his co-host, who is only allowed to watch the shows featured here. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/animeoutofcontext. Alongside over 100 hours of exclusive bonus material, all episodes uploaded to Patreon are completely ad-free, even to non-patrons. Thank you for listening, and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Anime Out of Context, the show where I attempt to explain the sometimes weird, sometimes wonderful, but always hilarious world of anime.
And I'm especially concerned.
I'm Sean Rollins.
I'm Remington Chase.
Now, Remington, the reason you're concerned is not super obvious. Because we just did a pre-banter where it's not a spoiler, it's in the title. Later in this episode, we're going to be joined by a very special guest.
Yep. And I have learned a little bit about them. That being said, it sounds like when we get our guest on for part 2 of the podcast, it just sounds like he and I differ in some significant ways.
Oh, what? That he's a very positive new anime watcher and you're just a cynical prick?
Yeah.
Well, at the very least, Remington, he is aware of what we do, and I don't know if he's listened to any of our episodes or not, but he affirmed in the positive that he wanted to come on the show and is looking forward to and excited to discuss it. So, quite frankly, I think it'll be a grand positive experience, provided you don't insult every aspect about him as a person.
I won't be insulting him. I might be insulting the things he loves. The things he cares about deeply.
Rem, you've been doing that to me for, well over a decade.
I mean, yeah, but, you know me. That's fine. You know what you got yourself into.
And this lovely man's first interactions with you are going to be like, okay, so here's the problems with this thing you like.
Yeah, that's not an ideal introduction, I think we can all agree.
No, it's not the best, but, it's all about bringing people together, our show, Remington.
Yeah, that's the major thing.
A lot of times, the people we bring together are people who absolutely hate our guts and want us dead. But, on the other hand, sometimes we bring people together in a lovely little community. And I'm here for it, quite frankly. For those who don't know, we are going to be joined in the second half by Luke of G.O.T. Games, and he is a very lovely man who makes a lot of great reaction content and music-based content, and is also the host of his own little podcast that he got started. And it is very good and very entertaining, and you should definitely go give him a watch or listen.
So we'll be joined by him quite shortly, but in the meantime, Sean, what are we watching?
Today, Remington, we're doing a revisit. Because we have a special guest, we are revisiting a show that he has already seen, because he's a very busy individual, and we're inviting him to come and discuss a little chunk of it together.
All right.
And and that being said, it's also a show that we've covered before in the past, simply due to the fact that it's a little bit easier to get into it. So how long this first part of the episode will probably be a little bit shorter than some, since we're going to want to dedicate a lot of our time to the second half with Luke.
Oh, yeah.
And, whatever comes of that, because whenever we have guests, things always derail and get crazy.
They tend to, yeah.
Look, I still remember the white Obama cookie situation. Like that lives rent-free in my head.
Oh, truly a wild time. So with all that said, what's the anime? I'm hoping upon hope it's something I like, so that I don't need to be an asshole.
Well, Remington, quite frankly, it's an anime. You know what our show's been missing? Aside from tension in the first part with you meeting a new person.
Yeah, our show has been missing a British man.
Well, yes, that is true. But I'm meaning more in the broad strokes. What our show has really been missing is more Rem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have one Rem, but what about second Rem?
You're one of your favorite waifus.
Yes.
You do have a collection.
Listen. I do have an unintentional collection of
unintentional, he says.
Look, the amount of times I've gotten blind bags or mystery things, and it's just been had a bunch of random Rem stuff in it.
The number of times he's snuck a peek into these blind bags to make sure it has what he wants, and being like, oh, perfect, yeah. Oh, what a surprise!
Criminy. But, Remington, we are talking about ReZero. And It is a very popular show, a show I quite like a lot, and one that we recorded, I think, 4 years ago at this
God
point.
damn.
So it's been a minute. So the important thing I need to ask you, Rem, is what do you remember from ReZero and what we covered of it?
All right. You had the main character,
Yep, Natsuki Subaru.
good old Subaru, and he doing his thing. Some stuff is kind of weird and mysterious, and then he finds out, oh fuck, the maid wants to kill me with like a giant flail or something. There was Ram, there was like a little bookish blonde girl.
Yep.
There was one of the last episodes I think we saw, he went to a shopkeeper or something, and shit went down, and there was death. Something like this. It's all very vague. It was 4 years ago.
It was 4 years
It's bits
ago.
and pieces.
You are so unbelievably out of order, it's hilarious.
Well, well, these are things that happen. These are just events that occurred and some characters who are around.
Well, don't worry, Rem. I am fully prepared to catch you up on everything, give you a brief synopsis of everything you've seen so far and where we left off. Because I also listened to our original episode and prep for this one, just to make sure.
Awesome.
Yep. So, Remington, ReZero. Back when we watched this originally, and I think mid-2020, we watched it because the second season was in the process of airing as well. And I was like, yeah, this is a good time to get into it, because it was very topical at the time, and it's a very popular series. But the basic premise of ReZero is this. Natsuki Subaru is minding his own business, going to a convenience store. He is a hikikomori otaku, which, if you recall, is somebody who really loves anime, manga, and all that jazz. But the hikikomori part is he is a shut-in. He does not leave his house. He doesn't go to school. Basically, the equivalent of a NEET while still being of a school-going age. He is 17 at the start of the series and 18, I believe, by the end of the first season, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there.
Sure.
So he's still a young guy, but pretty damn close to being a full adult. And he is very much a character whose strong desires. He gets isekai'd, immediately recognizes that he's been isekai'd because, let's be honest, in this day and age, if you're isekai'd, you're like, so this is what's happened.
Yeah.
And you
like,
you
I get it. I understand the routine.
Yep. And because he's been isekai'd, he has some predetermined expectations. He thinks, okay, so I'm going to be the hero, I'm the protagonist, I'm going to be getting some kind of magical, super overpowered ability, I'm going to meet a beautiful heroine, and she's going to be the love of my life. You know, all these typical, like, blind otaku things.
Yeah.
He starts out very much seeming like a blank slate stand-in character for the audience, which is a bad thing, usually.
But then he learns that it's murderous Groundhog Day.
100%, yes. Because as he's interacting with the world, he tragically gets killed. Doesn't know by what at the start. And then wakes up in front of an apple merchant, the merchant you mentioned, and is confused by it. And through a very convoluted series of events and multiple deaths, he finds out that he has the ability to what he calls return by death, where if he is killed, he resets at a particular save point. Now, he doesn't know what causes these save points, but the show is very much him figuring out his situation as well as trying not to die. And the first arc of this is him going through all of that, meeting the half-elven girl, Amelia, who he takes a fancy to. Just a very straightforward, kind-hearted young lady who is entrapped in a plot to be, not a plot, but she is essentially one of the potential heirs to the throne of this kingdom, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories going along around her. And this first arc is him trying his best to, 1, not die, and 2, save everybody involved.
Sure.
And he is mostly successful for that. It takes a couple tries, but after this first arc, he manages to protect everybody, makes a few friends, meets a few key allies, and he succeeds. And then you weren't the biggest fan of this first arc because it felt a little bit generic to you, and you weren't a big fan of Amelia because at the time you thought she was just a generic tsundere. Which, upon further reflection, she has, like, some tsundere qualities where she doesn't like to admit that she's helping people because she likes to help people. But she's not, like, your typical, it's not like I like you or anything but violent tsundere, which is a nicer change. She is interesting, to say the least, but you weren't a big fan of her at this. And at the end of that arc, in the beginning of the new one, he wakes up in the mansion where she is staying, surrounded, of course, by the two maids, Rem and Ram, and the proprietor of the house, Roswell, who, if you recall, is like a big mime clown-looking guy.
I do not remember them in the least.
You will when you see him, don't worry. And the little blonde bookish girl, Beatrice.
Yep.
Who lives in a extra-dimensional library, essentially.
Yeah, and she, like, implied more knowledge in a helpful but sinister way or something. Mm-hmm. Once again, I'm remembering vibes more than events.
Yeah. One thing that I think is revealed at that point is that she is not human. She is a spirit, because this is a world of magic, and there are entities that are called spirits that are basically magical entities that can grant powers and make contracts and things of that nature.
Sure.
And during this second arc, this mansion arc, we're introduced to the situation. Subaru offers to be a butler for the mansion because, he wants to have a job so that he can sustain himself, and he's a bit stupid, so he doesn't ask to be taken care of and live in the mansion, on his first go-around. And during this first go-around, everything is going great. He's making friends with the maids and such. Well, he's making mostly friends with Ram and trying to be close to Amelia, but Ram is a little bit wary of him, to say the least.
Don't I know it?
Both you and blue-haired Rem are both wary of him. And up to this point, he's been a very, bombastic, straightforward guy. You feel bad for him in the fact that he's been horribly killed a couple times, but he is still very much the prototypical otaku character where he wants to be the cool isekai protagonist and has kind of some charisma to do it, but is incredibly awkward about everything and doesn't quite pull it off because, he's just a dude. And he's also kind of a bit of a man-child is the way to phrase it. He is never outright malicious, but he is very unconsciously selfish a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But during this first experience, he's having a grand old time. It's going great. He goes to sleep one night, and then he wakes up back where he started on his first night in the mansion. And that's kind of where the mystery started. And
it's like, oh crap, I must have somehow died, but how did that happen?
Yep.
What's going on?
Exactly. And the mystery of okay, wait, what happened? He's freaked out naturally because who wouldn't be? The only power he has that he knows of is, okay, if I die, I reset to a point. And thankfully he didn't reset all the way to Apple Stand Guy, which would have been rough.
Yeah.
But he has a new save point of waking up on the first day of this mansion. And he then immediately goes into Super Sleuth mystery mode, trying to relive his life perfectly the exact same way so that he can go on a date with Amelia, because that's how the one night ended where he died. He was he got a date with Amelia. It was great. He was super excited. He goes to sleep, wakes up completely dead. Tries to do everything in the exact same way, but whether unconsciously or not, things don't go the exact same way.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of timey-wimey fuckery.
Yeah, and then it eventually leads to a cliff confrontation with a crazy
Ram, actually.
Oh, Crazy Ram.
So what happens is, after his first exploration of trying to figure things out, he dies another time, but this time not peacefully in his sleep. He hears chains and he gets absolutely eviscerated by something. He doesn't know what. It's violent, it's brutal, it's horrifying. And then he spends his entire next life doing things completely differently to try and plan and figure out what's going on. His interpretation is that somebody broke into the mansion and is planning on killing everybody. So he wants to do some espionage sleuthing stuff, which makes him incredibly suspicious to Rem in particular. And we find out in the episode where we left off that the one who absolutely eviscerated him was in fact the blue-haired maid Rem, with a massive chained flail that is brutal, quite frankly. And he is traumatized by this fact because he thought he was getting very close to and getting along with her. But when in actuality, she was super suspicious of him the whole time because this random guy showed up out of nowhere and was getting close to her big sister and everybody involved, and, has a bit of a stink to him. Because he does have a stink to him. He has the touch of the witch, if you will. A witch miasma, because whatever his power is, it's dark and it seems to have a connection to the evil witch that this whole country is. not a fan of.
Sure, and if I recall correctly, I had much more favorable thoughts on the second part than the first.
Correct. Because once you added this little mystery element and like him reacting to the trauma of having to reset his relationships over and over again, because we've talked about in the past that death itself, if your character is not able to die, that doesn't automatically mean there are no stakes.
Yeah.
Right? It means that you can be more creative with your stakes and make them more valuable. And in this case, the stakes for this is Subaru does not want to die horribly and painfully, obviously.
Yep.
He doesn't want the people around him to die, which is unfortunate, because who knows when his save points reset. So he's doing everything he can to keep people alive. And he also doesn't want to have to keep restarting relationships, because, like, there's nothing more traumatic, I think, than getting close to somebody and then everything being reset and them not knowing anything about you or who you are or how you feel. And where we ended up, that last episode ends with him essentially fully isolating himself for the full week-long period that he has been experiencing, doing everything he can to keep himself safe. He makes a brief contract with Beatrice to keep him safe until that particular day, and so he doesn't die, because he's terrified and he doesn't want to do it. He's choosing a very slothful way to get through this.
Yeah.
But at the end of that period, he is alive. He wakes up on the next day and it's like, oh my god, I'm alive. It's great. But he wakes up to the sounds of crying and screams. And those crying and screams are coming from Rem's twin sister. Because in the night, Rem had passed away very similar to the way he did on the first night. And, that just goes to show that
there's more going on.
There's a little bit more going on, and Rem wasn't the one that killed him initially on that first night. Because obviously, if Rem's going to kill you, she's going to absolutely eviscerate you hand to hand.
Yeah.
She didn't use a poison or a curse or whatever. Unfortunately, Subaru is freaked out by this, and obviously in this timeline, Ram did not interact with him at all, so he's basically just a catatonic stranger to her. And he tries to offer sympathy, but she's having none of it, because what the fuck does he know? He freaks out, runs out to a cliff, and is contemplating throwing himself off to reset, but of course that's still fucking terrifying to do, because, he doesn't know how long this power is going to work, and also dying is not fun, all things considered. But that episode ends with him confronting Ram, saying, I'm going to save you, I'm going to save all of you, and then jumping off the cliff to his death, with this newfound determination to save everyone, including Rem. I think at this point you can start to see that Subaru isn't just a blank slate. He is an individual that has a lot of flaws, but he has room for growth and experience. And where we're going to go into, we're going to finish the entirety of this mansion arc, as well as start the next arc of the show. And in an ideal world, I would have you just watch the rest of the first season, but that's too much. That's too much for you, and that's too much for our guest. But I think getting through the biggest chunk of this is going to be helpful, because the first half of the first season, more than the first half, the majority of the first season is the deconstruction of Natsuki Subaru as a character, breaking down all of his preconceptions, as well as his entitlement and his ridiculous otaku behaviors, his selfish nature, and because he's quite frankly a bad person to begin with. Not intentionally, mind, but, people can be bad people without realizing it. And by the end of the first season, he is a half-decent individual, but we have to really break him down farther and farther and farther until we get to that point. And today, after the mansion arc, you're going to see Natsuki Subaru at his absolute lowest. And I will say, when I watched this part the first time, after the mansion arc, I straight up dropped the series because I related too much to him, because I was so fucking pissed at him. Gang, if you ever feel like you relate to Natsuki Subaru, that's a problem. That's a problem. So, without further ado, I think we should go straight into it. Let's go back and watch some more ReZero, and then, when we come back, we'll have a nice, lovely conversation with Luke. And we are back after watching episodes 8 through 14 of the hit 2016 anime ReZero. And Remington, I can't wait to hear what you have to say, but the thing is, you're not important right now. Right now, what's important is the fact that you and I are not alone. It's been a while, but we actually have a lovely guest on our show. And that lovely guest is Luke of G.O.T. Games. Luke, welcome to the show.
Hello, both of you. Hello, Remington. Hello, Sean. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited. I'm very excited to talk about my favorite PG, family-friendly anime, ReZero.
Yes, it's wholesome fun for the whole family. I make sure all 6-year-olds get a chance to watch this show whenever applicable, because it teaches them life lessons.
Just more and more, they're showing it in schools. Move over like Bill Nye the Science Guy or a little Magic School Bus. Now it's just ReZero.
I heard Nickelodeon is picking up season 4, so it's going to be exciting.
I can't wait to see it on the Kids' Choice Awards. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Subaru's going to get slimed.
It'll be great. It'll be perfect.
Yeah, nice.
See, I'm excited to have somebody who has had a similar arc to me of like finding and discovering anime, but is on the complete opposite spectrum of less cynical and jaded right off the bat.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
The most interesting thing about Luke, and for those who don't know, what Luke does on his channels is primarily reactionary content to music, as well as
maybe don't call it reactionary. That's different implications.
That is different implication.
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Reactionary. It usually has strong political connotations.
Oh, are you political?
That's me then. That's me. It's all about politics. It's subliminal. It's like very subtle. Every other word, I say a word really quickly, and I try and it's like that brainwashing old school 80s subliminal stuff. That's what I'm.
Got to make sure the agenda gets pushed properly, right?
Exactly. So the highest bidder, whoever pays for it, it's just if you play it backwards, it's a whole different message.
Perfect.
But essentially, Luke makes a lot of content about music and music adjacent stuff, as well as recently in the past 2 years, you've started your journey watching anime and getting inundated in the anime community. Is that about right?
I guess. I mean, so I've only been doing YouTube for about 2 years. But when I started, it was the channel is community controlled, and it's been like that since day one, which I find really interesting, because if you go back 2 years and check the beginning of 2022, when I properly started getting into reaction content, because the channel was quite old, but it was never a reaction channel.
Right.
You can see the timeline progression. So you can see it was like the music I was listening to where we are now, and that's all been community voted. So every video that ever goes up on my channel is recommended from the comment section, and it's always been it's been just steered by the growth of the audience and the community's coming in, and then that's where we are now. So it's amazing how the natural progression of the channel went from like American rap, Filipino rap, and like that sort of music. Somehow it's now mainly Japanese content, anime, and Indonesia is one of my biggest audience too, and it's just that's all without me influencing it. I've just let it. I started the car, I pushed it down the hill, and I'm like, all right, we'll see where it goes. And that's literally it. So it's very random, but it's been fun.
Yeah, that sounds very fascinating. Just letting the audience take the reins, as it were.
Yeah, it's a fully audience-controlled channel. It's nice because I don't have to worry about the content. I'm like, whatever. If the channel never does well, I just blame the viewers.
There you go.
Weird, that's what Remington does every time he doesn't like a show we cover. That's,
And there are plenty of times, we have a strong recommendation focus as well, and there's a lot of people who are frequently like, oh, Remington, you'll love this. You'll adore it. And then I'll end up watching it and be like, I don't know where you got that from, because nope, incorrect.
Well, good. It's good that you don't get peer pressured into being like, I did love it. It was amazing. You got to be honest.
Yeah.
You got to be like, nah, it wasn't for me.
The one thing you can say about my partner here is he never gets peer pressured into anything. Much to my detriment, I will say, because I'm supposed to be like the voice of the anime fans, as it were. And if he says something, I'm like, oh crap, I agree with you. Then I get a lot more flack than he does, and it's a whole other thing. But yeah, I personally love your channel. I actually watched your Full Metal Alchemist watch through, and
thank you.
Was very entertained throughout the whole thing, because one, I love people watching one of my favorite shows, and two, you had such a genuine and honest reaction to everything, and were very clear about your thoughts, views, and opinions that I thought you would be a wonderful fit to have on this podcast for at least an episode, just to see how things go.
Nah, I appreciate it. That's always something I try and make sure as well. And it can get me a bit of like flack sometimes, but I think it's like just making sure, like Remington clearly does, that when you react to these things, when you watch these things, you're honest. So, especially considering if you want to get recommendations based on something you might like, if you just start bullshitting, if you're like, oh, I really like this, then you're going to get recommendations to more stuff you didn't like. So you've got to be like whenever at the end of every single anime I watch, I'll always say what I thought about it, what my opinions were. And I'll always go into it open-minded, be emotional. And I think like it's good. People want that. People want real now. 9 times out of 10 people are just it's just fake.
Yeah.
So you got
the dangerous thing, at least with the audience we've cultivated, is that they actively enjoy when I am suffering. So even when I dislike something, very often they'll be like, "Oh, perfect, more of that then." Actually,
I'm curious how like what anime. So what with your maybe political tastes in anime then? I don't know, polarizing maybe. I don't know. What are your like some of your favorite ones then that you really like them, Remington? Just so I can get an idea of your tastes overall.
Generally, I like the two ends of the spectrum that tend to appeal to me the most. So at one end, like slice of life focusing on really like human stories, where it's not super high stakes, but it's just meaningful because you really care about the characters. And on the other end, I'm a big fan of very character-centered plots that, especially if they have a little bit of edge and mystery to them. Odd Taxi is my go-to example. Just something that I think is phenomenally done and well-crafted. And those are like the two main categories. The significant category that I tend not to vibe with a ton is like standard shonen fare, where if it just falls into all of those cliches, if it's a cliche-ridden power fantasy, there's an uphill battle.
Okay. So it's something a bit more centered around reality, like realism in your anime is something you'd sort of lean towards.
Yeah, and I don't even necessarily think it needs to have like realism in concept, but realism in characters. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can't remember what's the genre. Genres are something I'm still, even after as long as I've been reacting to anime for, still struggle on. What's the one that's like you said, slice of life, maybe a bit more like romantic? What's that sort of category in anime? What's it called? Do either of you know?
It could just be called slice of life, quite frankly.
Yeah, if it has a more romantic focus, then it could often end up in shoujo.
Yeah.
It might be shoujo. That's why because what you said like about like centered around characters, I was gonna say I did a reaction to episode 1 of a bunch of anime, and it was Kimi ni Todoke or Kimi ne Todoke. I don't know if either of you seen that. Sean, have you seen it? I know you've seen a bit more. You haven't seen it, Remington?
Yeah, we haven't covered it, but I am familiar.
I feel like Remington might like that then. Is like I've only seen 1 episode, but it seemed very well written and very like character focused and really like real. Just based on 1 episode, it sort of like sucked me in a little bit. Maybe shoujo would be like a good, if that's the category.
Yeah,
maybe that'd be a good genre for you to explore.
The easiest way to remember the difference between like shoujo and shonen is it's less of a genre and more of a demographic, right? So shonen is like anime and manga made for young men, young boys, and shoujo is made
and all of that encompasses.
Yes, is made for younger girls and young women specifically. So while there's usually like a lot of like battle action heavy violence in the shonen and a lot of fluffy fun romance in the shoujo side of things, it's a little bit it's more of like targeting a specific group rather than having one specific thing. Because like magical girl anime, for example, is considered shoujo, right? And that's a lot of punching and fighting, your Sailor Moons, your Madoka Magicas, things like that. That's one of the easiest ways to remember it, is just that for those big broad categories, one is targeted mainly towards boys, one mainly towards girls. And there are lots of problems with both ends of the spectrum. But Remington has liked more shoujo than he's liked shonen, I can guarantee you that.
Have you guys done Bunny Girl Senpai yet?
We have. But Remington, do you remember it at all?
All I remember is horribly disappointing Sean, because I didn't like it nearly as much as he did.
Don't spoil the ending, by the way, because I'm only on episode 8.
Never would.
But I at first I was like, I don't know about this one, and we'll see where it goes. But I think it has some of the best character writing I've seen in anime. Like, and so I was gonna say, I've with Remington cemented in like character focus. I thought Benigel Senpai had some of the best character writing I've ever seen. The characters and dialogue especially is masterful. Like, they actually talk like how normal people. The two main characters, their friendship is very realistic with like how they talk. And then the relationships feel very realistic, and I found myself like really impressed because it wasn't anime I expected that from. But I would put it like in like top 3 for terms of character dialogue and character writing.
Yeah, and that was one of the first anime we actually covered on the podcast back in, I want to say we covered it either end of 2018 or beginning of 2019. And he only saw 3 episodes of it at the time, which is, just the first story with Sakurajima and such. Because I figured that would be a good introduction to it. And if I remember correctly, I think, Remington, your overall review was, I wanted to dislike it more, but I couldn't.
Yeah, I ended up, I think it was either like a tentative enjoyment or like pretty close smack dab in the middle. You wanted me to like it a lot more.
Because I love that show. It's such a good show.
Let's jump into the episode of today in ReZero. So Luke, we have done one episode of ReZero before where we covered episodes 1 through 7. Generally, my thoughts on that were the first few episodes I wasn't a huge fan of. I thought they were very cliche and bad. But then once we got into the mansion arc, a little bit of mystery elements were introduced, I was a lot more hopeful and started enjoying it a lot more. So that's basically where we left off years and years ago in our first episode on this. And now we jump into episode 8. So episode 8, we start with Subaru waking up, which is like the go-to move in ReZero. Subaru wakes up, somebody is next to him. In this case,
don't forget the sound.
Yeah,
you gotta have wait, you gotta have that noise every time.
Yep. We have Rem and Ram. They greet him, and Subaru is like, "Okay, I'm going to be the best servant this time. I'm gonna figure out what's going on, and I'm going to survive, and everybody else is gonna survive this cycle." And so he does his best to be a fantastic servant. This is also where we get introduced to the magic system, where they're like, "Oh man, look at Amelia doing magic," and then there's like, "Oh, it's not magic. You see, it's just magic."
Yes, the difference between the spirit arts and then like internalized magic. Yeah, because there are like 3 core magic systems in the ReZero setting, and they wanted to give you just the briefest of primers on the differences between what Amelia does and what most other people do.
It feels like all magic to me, so...
Hey, it's important for things later down the line, trust me. The difference between spirit magic and normal magic is very important, especially involving the antagonist you were introduced to at the end of the 14th episode.
So then we learn that Subaru himself, everybody has an attribute, and Subaru's attribute is Shadow, and so he can do a bunch of debuffing spells, but the only one we've seen him cast from episode 8 to about episode 15 has been Shamak, which is just a big spooky darkness spell.
The big cloud.
Yeah, big cloud.
His big cloud spell, yeah.
And so the episode continues a little bit more on that front, and then it ends with a bit of a character moment between Amelia and Subaru. And after that, Subaru's like, okay, I should probably figure out, like, more about curses and, trying not to die. Which, a good move. It seems advisable at this stage.
Yeah. Subaru's character definitely is one of those ones, and I think you noticed this a bit in the earlier episodes where he's contemplating just how important his life is, and he goes on like roller coasters from like, I can just use this ability to I shouldn't be using this ability. It's like justifying just the idea that I can just kill myself, restart, blah blah blah, and then realizing his life's more important and that's not how I should focus. And I feel like this is one of those episodes where he sort of gets to the height with like the Amelia scene at the end, where he understands, oh, my life is a bit more valuable. I should take a bit more care of it.
Yeah. I will say, I wish they were a little bit more just consistent on that front, either in the arc Subaru kind of takes with that, because it's very wishy-washy. Instead of it being like, oh, Subaru starts out a bit reckless, but then gradually learns to be less reckless. Instead, it is sometimes he's extremely reckless with it. Other times he completely avoids using that power. But then he's fine being reckless again. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of like accentuated points explaining like those transitions in any meaningful way. It often, at least at this stage, feels like a plot convenience rather than a more character-driven decision a lot of times, which for me was a little bit unfortunate.
I think if you look at how he's died, that kind of influences how he is when he wakes up, because he is like, this is something that like the audience reminded me a lot of as well, that Subaru is just a kid. Like, he's very young and he's been thrown into this world, and at first he's like excited, how most of us would be. Oh, I'm in this crazy new world, how awesome, especially with someone who's got like that kind of background and knowledge in this world. And that like in our world, I mean, like with something like playing games and watching anime. And then I feel like, because that was something I thought was a bit strange as well, is how Subaru would just act differently, and he'd be like confident and be like, I'm the hero, and then he'd be like devastated sometimes. And then I realized it's just like, it would be based on how he died, when he died, and those would influence his actions on when he's alive again. If he's tried so hard, then had this brutal, horrible death, everyone around him dies, then when he wakes up, you'll see him just like shelter, shut down, give up. And then sometimes if he's a bit closer, then he might wake up and you see him a bit more enthusiastic. And I feel like it's a way, it's not like, it's more of like him being close to that goal. And if it feels completely unachievable, then when he has that reset, then his attitude will be, I can't achieve it. So he just sort of seems to like bounce between these two different emotions. I mean, it's like us, sometimes we're in a good mood, sometimes we're in a bad mood.
100%. And I think that is a point with a lot of merit. I suppose I wish that there were more gradients on the scale, and that we were able to see a little bit more of like evolution from one side to the other when it's shifting, because very often it doesn't have a lot of it feels like either not quite justified, like, okay, there's a little bit of explanation, but if it's the case right here, why wasn't it before? There's sometimes when it makes a lot of sense, other times where I think it makes less sense.
And I think that can probably be chalked up to adaptation in a lot of ways, because ReZero is a light novel adaptation. And Luke, are you familiar with the concept of light novels in particular?
Yeah, it's usually a bit more, this is something that I sort of spoke about recently, because with light novels, I notice usually get a lot more dialogue scenes. Like, it's way more dialogue heavy, dialogue focused. And when it's turned into an anime, it all depends. Where you're either going to get one that's very dialogue heavy, or you can get one that doesn't follow the light novel as much, doesn't follow that dialogue, and then can be a bit more branded. Yeah.
And
so it's all like 50-50.
With ReZero specifically, I've only read the first light novel myself, because I don't have time to read every light novel for every anime we cover. But for a lot of the light novels, it's very much delving into a lot of high fantasy stuff with lots of minute details here and there. And the anime has to do a lot of work to cut around all the extenuating details and the point A to the point B to kind of make it a more concise, watchable experience. Which is just the nature of adaptation. Sometimes things get cut and leaves the final product feeling a little bit weird in some places, but overall can usually be a better situation for the story overall, because knowing about the magic system, very important. Reading a full chapter about the magic system and watching that, probably not as important. And knowing how time works in the world, probably not super important either. Can make some assumptions. But the books themselves have a lot of extra details for those who are big fans of that kind of thing. And it's when those things get cut out that they can feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect between what's going on in the story and Subaru's mindset. But what I think is most interesting about the Mansion arc and going into the next arc after that is just the raw breakdown of Subaru as a character. Because, like Remington says, he starts very much as a very generic shonen isekai protagonist. But as the story goes, you actually see he is actually a character with thoughts and views and opinions and desires, and a lot of those misconceptions that he has about what he deserves and what the world is going through gets taken away and broken down piece by piece by piece by piece.
That's actually a really good point. Like, because if you think about when he's first introduced to the world, he does seem to want to be like you get like when you watch episode 1 or 2, you're like, okay, here we are, classic isekai story. Gonna want to level up, gonna want to get stronger, gonna want to get better. He's the dude, and we're just gonna watch him slowly become king of this world.
Yeah, he wants to be the protagonist.
And then you're just like, yeah, and then you immediately realize, no, that's not what's like. But it takes a few episodes for this to sink in, and you're like, okay, that's not this story. We're not watching a character become strong. We're watching a character just tread water and try to survive without becoming strong. Like and like Subaru's strength is in becoming friends with people, not in him actually just leveling up, which is another sort of interesting thing. You don't really see. The only anime I can compare it to, which is weird, would be like Konosuba, which is like with Kazuma. Like he doesn't really like. It's the same with him. His strength is in his friendships, not so much in his strength. But other than that, most of the time, the characters level up and get stronger in Shonen.
And this was something that was a little bit of my critique when I first started watching ReZero, where I was like, there's an interesting element here of somebody being isekai'd and not being very powerful and having to rely on those external links. And I was hoping that they would transition more into that, because at least in the first few episodes, one of my big complaints was how, for some reason, Subaru started out as just like a really talented and athletic fighter, which was a really weird decision, where he's fighting 3 thugs easily in the alleyway, making it look easy breezy. And it was like, oh, I didn't think that was the direction they were going, and it's not. As we're gonna see in the episodes, the other episodes we talk about, they do emphasize that he is powerful through friendships rather than in and of himself. It was just a very weird decision to have him appear powerful early on.
I think it's like a bit of a switcheroo. That's so, because you realize that Subaru, I mean, you'll find out later on a bit more about Subaru's past and why he might have those sort of abilities. You'll find out later on. I won't spoil it for you.
Thank you.
But it will get explained, and when it does, it makes sense. But I think like in that situation, I think it was more, you realize that when he's on a level playing field with another person, he's probably going to win. But in this world, I think it was like, let's look at him. Here he is. Okay, he's actually really tough. It is going to be one of those stories. We are going to see him get stronger. And he says that. He's like, I'm going to kick some ass. And then even with the first fight with Elsa, he's like has some defensive moments. And you're like, oh shit, Subaru, like, there might be a time, a few episodes later on, where Subaru actually gets to take on Elsa. It learns a bit of magic, and we come back to revisit this. And I feel like it does a really good job at saying, like, it's like a magic trick. It goes like, look over here, but really something's happening over here. It takes our focus, makes you think something's going to be like that, and then throws a little twist in there. But yeah, because at first, that's exactly what I thought as well, with the fight in the alleyway. I was like, okay, so here we go. Following, like you said, cliches. But I liked how ReZero just flips that on its head.
See, and it's interesting just how wildly like differentiated both of our interpretations of that is. Because you view it as, oh, fascinating subversion and a bit of a magic trick, whereas I'm like, I don't think they were accomplishing what they were setting out to do and kind of undermine the point they want to make later. And I think there's merit to both interpretations, surely. So let's continue on as we go into episode 9. At this point, Subaru has learned that the curse has to be caused by physical contact. And so he's like, okay, so I got it from the village in the times that I've gone there. That makes sense. And so he shows up to the village. He makes contact with everybody in different ways. He's like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to sort this out. He goes, is like, hey, have I been cursed? He has. And he figures out that his curse is on his hand, signifying that the person who cursed him was a little puppy dog. It's always the little adorable puppy dog that'll get you. You know?
I mean, let's be honest, Remington. If you were in a fantasy world and you were going to get cursed by something,
that's what would get me.
Like, without fail.
Yeah, no one can resist stroking a puppy. And it just goes to show, because that's what happened with Subaru.
Yep.
And that's it, and he was fine.
They do just remove the curse very easily. He leaves with Rem to the village, and when they get there, some of the children have gone missing. Oh no, the witch fiend barrier is broken. Then we get a weird moment right? Because they're like, oh, the kids are in danger. And they have this weird moment where they're like, oh, by the way, here's each kid and what they wanted to be when they grow up. And it's very important. These are important kids, all right? And I was like, oh, all right. Maybe you could have more naturally introduced that rather than being like, the kids are in danger. You know, all of these specific kids with all of their specific hopes and dreams. You understand this, right?
I think it serves more to show that Subaru is paying attention to these kids, and he shows that it's more to show that Subaru cares rather than the characters of the kids themselves, which is a little clunky, I'll admit, but I think that's rather the purpose, rather than being like, you gotta pay attention to these kids, when in actuality, only one of those kids is relevant in the story later on, so...
It just felt like so unnatural in its storytelling in that moment, because like it could have been so straightforward. In fact, we've now at this point seen multiple scenes at the village, right? Including like Subaru interacting with these kids, and so like why not use that moment to show to really emphasize the kids and their personalities, as well as like even further Subaru's like more personal relationship, because what we see is more or less him being treated as this great hero, but without much texture to that. It doesn't feel like they love him because they're having a personal relationship, but just they just happen to feel great about him. And so then later when it's like, oh yeah, and it's actually this really personal thing, I'm like, oh, that would have been great to see and feel before just having it imposed upon him.
With like that, I looked at it as so Subaru himself being quite young-minded and being young in general. So when it came to most of the people he interacts with are a bit older, he doesn't click with. I mean, up until this scene, he sort of like butted heads with every single person. So he sort of becomes maybe like, you're like, he's just unlikable in this world. You know, the only one who seems to kind of like him is Amelia. And I can't remember what we've seen of their relationship until this point, but obviously even they have their issues as well. And then with this like reminding of the children, it was like, oh, look at all their relationships and everything Subaru's picked up. It was kind of like, oh, so because people do like him, but he's showing this attention with the younger kids, they're clicking on with him. And it's at this moment in the anime, I'd say without that, you would just assume Subaru is pretty much not really liked by anyone, especially with the conversation he has with Betty. I think in this episode, it just seems like no one really cares about him. He's just like cannon fodder. I think in this moment, it sort of cements him as someone who there are people who care about him as well, because otherwise he's just literally like meat. But also, I think ReZero tries its best as well to be a sort of mystery, like to make you ask questions and investigate. And it throws little clues at you so you can try and work things out. And with this scene, I think it does a bit of foreshadowing for a reveal later on with the introduction of the kids' stories. And if you like watch all those stories, you can kind of figure out something that happens next episode based on how they do that, which is something that when we were doing the reaction, I pointed out, and then it reveals something later on. And I think there's a few scenes in ReZero where it does highlight these sort of things. So later on, you can be like, like even with the dog, it's like that sort of like pointed out a little bit, and then you can work out, and then you get that sort of like dopamine, don't you? You're like, shit, I figured that out. I'm a genius. And I think it likes doing that. It likes throwing these little mystery clues at you, and you can sort of go, wait a second, A equals, oh shit, and then it feels good. That sort of like classic Knives Out murder mystery style. It likes to put that in there.
And I suppose that it's a case where, like, everything you're describing, I'm like, yeah, those are solid, like, character decisions and some good, like, foreshadowing decisions in the abstract. I just don't think that I think that the execution of that was flawed. I think what they were going for is solid and interesting and compelling, but sometimes the execution ends up being clunky or forced, and that can lessen the impact of what they're going for. So I completely agree that what they're going for is a solid route and an interesting one, but I think that they sometimes miss their mark in reaching those goals.
I'd love to hear your opinions on an anime that's sort of been like was sort of a bit of a miss with me.
Oh yeah,
as well, and that's Hellsing Ultimate, because something you have you seen it?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you what.
That was one of our first episodes.
We have an episode on it. I was not a fan, so.
Oh no!
I knew it. I knew it. I know it, because you were like, the way you talk is like, you don't like things if they feel too out of place. You're like, if something feels too out of place, doesn't, like, if it's just like, they've got this story going on, they throw something in here, and you're like, that doesn't fit with the story that's going on. You don't seem to like it.
Yeah.
And with Hellsing Ultimate, that was that's my number one reason for not liking it, is it felt like you'd have these big, like, lead up to something, some really cool action, and then they just go, whoosh, and you'd be like, this is really weird. Or they'd have like a random bit of comedy, a random like 10-minute dialogue scene, and it felt just so much like this.
Yeah.
And for that I couldn't get into it. And just what you were saying just then, I was like, I'd love to know if he's seen Hellsing Ultimate, and I bet he hated it.
You'll also see a lot of similar things in a lot of like serialized shonen that like need to get published on a frequent basis. And so because they can't really like go back and revise the story as it exists in a meaningful way, they often just have to be like, oh, I came up with this cool idea, but it would make this bit earlier not make sense. So let's just shove it in with some crazy explanation and don't worry about it. And those bits always, they take me out of it a bit, because I like a nice cohesive, everything exists together beautifully. And so when things are forced in there, or they end up feeling a little bit inauthentic, or they aren't naturally interwoven through the narrative, it can definitely take me out a little bit.
I definitely think that's where our experiences of ReZero will differ, because with me, I was reacting to every single episode on YouTube, and it's a light novel adaptation, like we were saying. So there's gonna be loads that's left out.
Oh yeah.
And when I watch an episode, I read the comments of that episode, and I'll get so many people saying, by the way, this was left out, and this is important. And I'll be like, thank you. And then immediately it's the building blocks to me understanding the story more. But with you, if you're not getting that, which means you're just watching it as it is. So if you feel like something's randomly put in there, they would have just thrown it in because they would have gone, crap, well, we didn't mention this earlier. This is important for later. So we need to put this in. Otherwise, season 2 is going to make no fucking sense. And for you might just be like, that felt a bit random. When really they were like, it's needed for later on. So maybe at the end, you'd be like, well, it was all need. But for me, people were explaining it. Totally different viewing experience, especially for a light novel adaptation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that you're spot on the difference in perspectives and some of the reasons why, because I very much evaluate these things due to like the format of our show as standalone things, right? And so don't get me wrong, I understand people will often get frustrated with me for assuming I don't understand these things, but I understand that like there might be things lost in adaptation, or there may be cultural differences, or if we're watching something older, it was a sign of the times. And I understand all of those things. But I usually attempt to review the media I'm given as it is, where we are now.
Without extra information. Yeah. This is what it is. This is what's happening.
Essentially,
I don't want to know all the behind the scenes stuff. I just want to watch
If you want to know whether it holds up, whether you can just jump in and watch it, then I will usually be able to give a pretty good answer.
Unless it's a show everybody loves, and then in that case, you're just the worst.
Hey,
you're the worst person.
Some shows everybody loves, I also love. Many shows everybody loves, I don't, and that's where we get a lot of hate.
What's a show that everybody loves?
Our go-to example that's like very, very popular that we've probably received the most hate about is probably Attack on Titan.
Including actual death threats. Yeah.
I should probably say to my audience, please be nice. Luckily my community is pretty sweet anyway, so we should be fine. I'd say in terms of anime creators, I would argue I have the friendliest community. So I think
perfect. And likewise,
should be all right.
To any of our community that heads over to your channel, be kind, be respectful. We try to cultivate that, because very often anime-centered communities can get a bit unhinged.
Oh yeah, all of you watching this, you guys are fucking crazy. So you need to calm down. So what was the anime show you said?
Oh, Attack on Titan.
Okay, I had a feeling it was going to be
that. yeah. Which was unfortunate, because like I love the idea and the concept. But everything I've seen, we've done multiple episodes on Attack on Titan. All of them have just inspired so much rage for people.
We watched the whole first season of Attack on Titan, and even after all that, neither of us had a strong opinion on it.
A strong
myself
positive
included. Well, yeah.
The thing is, after I finished season 1, I did very much love it. But after watching the whole show, when I go back and watch season 1, I'm like fast forwarding. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get through season 1. I'm like, come on, let's get through season 1. I know what's coming. I'm done. And I'm trying to start like halfway through season 2 because for me, once I've seen all of Attack on Titan, I'm like masterpiece. But season 1, like when you know what's coming, it's like if you rewatch Game of Thrones, for example, you know all the fights, all the battles, everything like that. You don't care about Ned Stark anymore. You're like, screw you, Ned Stark. Let's just screw.
Oh, harsh.
You just want to get through. As a huge Sean Bean fan, right, it's harsh to say, but you just want to get to the Battle of the Bastards, Hard Home. You want those episodes. You don't want like Ned Stark.
To fully skip the last 2 seasons as well. That's the other thing you got to do because those don't exist.
Yeah. Continuing on with episode 9, so it's the puppy dog that has caused this great curse, and so they, along with Rem, Subaru goes into the forest and very quickly finds the missing children. That was the easy part. Really just like stumble in and be like, oh, they're right there. Talks with them, but one of them is missing. So Subaru heads back into the forest to try and find the missing child. He finds them, but he is struck by a hellhound, a vicious-looking creature that is there to attack him. It looks like Subaru's fucked. But then, and this is where this episode I don't think is a good one. Subaru just very easily kills a hellhound, like kind of no problem. And then a bunch more show up. But then Rem shows up and she kills them like super easily. And there's not like a cool action scene to go along with this. It's mostly you smack a hellhound once and it's done for. Which feels like it loses the luster of showing this really cool, dangerous looking creature. You poke it dies, actually. So, oh well. And it immediately loses all sense of threat in that regard, and that was very unfortunate in my mind, because it's supposed to be this really tense scene, right? Subaru a bit weaker, Rem extremely powerful, and like enters her demon form, but all of these hellhounds are still here, but they're just so weak and pathetic, and they don't do anything that there's not actually tension.
It's so funny because like my memory of this is, oh my God, Rem's gonna die. That's like my memory, but you're like, and you would have watched it more recently. You were like, Rem just icing all of them, and I was like, I remember being like, oh my God, like Rem's fucked, and now I'm like, what's good? Did I watch it wrong? Like now I'm confused.
But yeah, I think the disconnect there is the 2 separate scenes. Like when Rem first interacts with, they're actually called the Ulgarm Rem. You should have paid attention to that very important piece of lore.
Oh, of course.
She very much devastates them, and it's like the full reveal of her being an actual demon, which was hinted at throughout the whole arc. Not subtly, mind, but in a way that, like, okay, yeah, she actually is literally a demon, or an Oni, as is the more accurate version, but it's easier to translate to Western audiences if you just call it a demon.
Yeah, so does episode 9... Am I thinking episode 10? I might be getting the 2 confused then.
No, I think it's towards the end of episode 9, and then also in episode 10 when it's like revisited, as it were. But because towards the end of episode 9, as Rem is going crazy, Subaru kind of like runs away, right? And then we don't see Rem get hurt in any way, right? We just kind of like look at Subaru, and then the next time he sees Rem, she's really messed up. I don't know why ReZero is seemingly terrified of showing like the action and the moments of impact and actually like the damage. It'll always do it after the fact. It's never like, oh crap, watch this pain, or at least very rarely. It will do so a bit later. But it loves instead to be like, oh man, what's gonna happen? All right, so this person got injured. Don't worry about how. Don't worry about the details. They're just injured now. I'm like, oh, I would have liked to see that fight scene a little bit more. Would have liked to see how they kind of got the best of her instead of just it happening randomly off screen.
I think for that, it's just like episode length and what the anime deems as important. Because for the anime, which like you said, it's not like, I wouldn't say ReZero is your usual shonen where like, I don't even know if I don't, to be honest, I don't know enough about the genres to even classify it, but where you would literally have like, for example, you watch Jujutsu Kaisen, the showcase is the fights, right? It's like, that's the whole point in that anime. It's like, you're here for fights, you watch Jujutsu Kaisen. Welcome to the world of fights. But with ReZero, it's more a fight is going on, but the showcase is everyone else and what they're doing while this devastation is unfolding around them. So with Rem, it's like the reveal of how strong she is. So immediately you're just thinking, she's fine, she's going to kill them all. And then it's like, we need to focus on Subaru and what he's doing because he is the main character. What's he doing with his children? How's this affecting him? It's all about like his mindset, his mentality in the situation. And I feel like that showcases what leads into the end of episode 9, episode 10. Like that showcases his character again because you see Rem's demeanor change, her attitude change, she becomes injured. And all the while you haven't seen that. You've just seen Subaru's mind change. So it's more, with all this stuff going on, it's what the anime chooses to focus on. So it's not like I said, not your usual, the fights are the most important thing. It's more, we're going to focus on what's happening with the characters while the fights are happening. But when Subaru is involved in the fights,
I suppose I would say they didn't need to have the fights at all if they didn't want them to be a focus, let alone so many of them. It was a narrative choice for them to make to, one, include many fights, but then two, not make them interesting fights and largely just yada yada over them. Like, they didn't need to. I agree that it's not the focus. So why are there so many of them that are done poorly and haphazardly? Why spend that much time on them instead of focusing on those character-centered moments, on the mystery and the growth? It feels like a misattribution of resources and time in that regard.
So for that entire scene and that episode, and again, if we sort of like cut into episode 10 a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say that for me, what it felt like was all of that, the main focus was on that one scene where Subaru saves Rem. That's it. That's the whole point in the takeaway from that fight. And that is because that cements, because later on in the show, the Subaru and Rem relationship is so important to like everything. And like his decision making and his attitude and his personality. And this scene where you think of everything that's happened with them before this, how messed up, and especially Rem's character development as well, because before this, she's freaking evil, she's terrifying. And I would say after this episode, everything changes. After that, like after Subaru saving her, when it doesn't really feel like something he wants to do, but then you just see that like he just is at his core good. Like he wants to help people at the expense of his own life. And again, it's just another example of he's saving these children, he might die. Goes to fight these hounds. It doesn't matter. He's here to help. Rem jumps in. Rem's this like terrifying force of destruction. But once again, when it seems Rem's in danger, and for all we know Rem would have been fine, Subaru immediately puts himself in harm's way. And I feel like that was my main takeaway from this scene and those fights. It was, we don't need to see the fight, but what we do need to see is that important moment of their character relationship. And Rem, and it was sort of like a back and forth where you had Subaru saving the kids, and it showcases Subaru's resolve. Rem getting involved and deciding, fuck, I'll take on the dogs. And it shows Rem, like, again, it shows her heart that she has at her core, which you don't really see until this point, but you do get to see that later on, how sweet she is, because she just becomes freaking adorable. And then you have, later on, once again, you have these two characters who you don't realize how similar they are, whereas they just want to help people, how kind they are. And then you have, like, a situation where they just, like, cross over. And then that just affects the entire story going forward, where Rem's been fighting this whole time. Subaru's been trying to save the kids. Rem's back. And Rem looks terrifying. And in that moment, I'm like, is she even going to kill Subaru? Like, she looks like she's about to attack him. Then he saves her, snaps out of it. And in that moment, it's almost like love. You just see, like, love form there. So it's like, it was more of the dynamic of, like, it was more like an emotional battle rather than the fight, I would say. And, like, seeing the bond of these two characters in them saving each other. That's what I sort of took away from it.
I think one of the most fascinating differences between our reviewing style is that I think both of us are pretty capable of seeing like the structure and seeing what it's going for. And I think that you are far more accepting of what it's going for in and of itself. Whereas I am critical in the ways that of how it develops what it's going for. Because once again, I completely agree with basically all of your interpretation of ReZero's goals, right? And what they're trying to accomplish. I just think that there is often inadequate development, and so it feels like they don't earn the moments that they're trying to create. It's like I see what you're trying to do, but I don't think that you've developed the characters, the moments, and that you've crafted it sufficiently to get me to that point. I see what you are attempting to do, but it seems like as you mentioned, the major moment of Rem getting saved by Subaru and that causing her to really fall for him. But you also mentioned it. There's no reason for us as the audience to think that Rem was actually in danger. They posited it as like, oh, the hounds are upon her, but like the hounds were upon Subaru and he was fine. So I'm pretty confident that Rem will also be A-okay. The Hellhounds just don't feel like a meaningful threat in this point, and a part of it is, well, you know, maybe it doesn't matter because Subaru would just do it anyway, because he's such a good person. But it's like, does that make him a good person, or does it? And this is kind of touched on in an episode we'll discuss. But does this make him a good person, or does this just make him somebody who actively causes problems for those around him, and in fact makes it so that he hurts the people closest to him instead of actually helping them, which is touched on later, but well, I have some critiques on how it's touched on, but I do appreciate that is touched on later.
Yeah.
That is Subaru's kind of mentality in a way, and it is addressed where, like, in that situation, hypothetically speaking, let's say Subaru doesn't intervene, and Rem wasn't trying to attack him because, you know, jury's still out whether or not. If you're just based on the anime, she looks like she's leaping towards him. So let's say that's not happening. She could have been fine. They could have escaped. But what you see a lot of the time is Subaru's selfishness comes from not wanting to see others suffer, even if they're saying they're fine. So, like, a character may be perfectly fine in a situation, may be able to survive a situation, but Subaru, which is weird because on the surface, and this is why it's like, Subaru is such an interesting character that it's like, you don't know whether you like him, you hate him in times, you're such a diverse character of how you feel about him, and that changes the whole way through the anime. And I think it takes other characters to make you realize him when they explain things, and that definitely helped me. Because in this situation, I look at it as, lovely guy Subaru trying to save Rem, what a sweetheart. But if Rem then in the next scene says, I would have been totally fine, what are you doing? Like, that's a selfish move. Subaru, for his own sanity, will try and stop people, even if they're perfectly capable, because he doesn't want to see them get hurt. And he'll say he's doing it for their benefit, which he says to Amelia all the time. But really, he's doing it for his benefit. And that's something that comes out later on. It's something the main characters tackle him with throughout the whole anime. And again, it's an interesting mindset because you as the viewer don't really know where you stand as well. It's like, do you like Subaru? Is he just this knight in shining armor trying to help everybody? Or is he just some selfish douchebag? And then later on, when it, like, with Amelia, I feel like the way she talks to him and how their relationship unfolds, that really helps you get a better understanding of who Subaru actually is. So it just takes a little while. But at the same time, I'm also very wary that I've seen it all.
Yeah.
So I'm coming from a future perspective looking back. So everything for me is already clicked.
Yeah, and I think it's worth like briefly skipping forward to talk about that moment with Amelia that we've been alluding to. We'll obviously get into the details in just a bit. But the broad idea is later on around episode like 13 or so, Amelia calls out Subaru. He's like, oh, I'm just trying to help, trying to be selfless. And she's like, no, you are being very selfish. This is more for you than it is for me. Stop pretending. And first of all, I do appreciate when an extremely flawed protagonist is called out. You don't get nearly enough of that in anime generally, where they are just wildly oblivious to the potential flaws of their protagonists, right? It is it is a refreshing change of pace, as it were. That being said, I don't think that the call out is accurate or enough, because for two main reasons. First, I think even how it's presented in that moment, I think that as it's trying to convey to the audience that, sure, from Amelia's perspective, it often seems selfish because of because he can't like fully explain himself. But it's not that he's actually selfish, it's that he's foolish or reckless. But he's foolishly selfless, he's foolishly caring, right? Which, okay, that's not, it kind of undermines the call out when I don't think it wants the audience to fully believe that. And then two, I don't even think the issue is that he's specifically selfish per se. I think that he's entitled. I think that he thinks that he deserves this specific spot. He deserves to be in this role. Essentially, he deserves to be a protagonist. And it goes back to those points, which I think is like compelling and interesting, but that specifically hasn't been called out. Like they're calling out the wrong things. And I'm like, oh, you have potential to further develop this character's most interesting flaws, but you're focused on all of the wrong things and handling them in weird ways.
Isn't it frustrating, Luke, how you know what happens next, but you can't say it to him?
Yeah, I've realized it. It's like I don't know if it's hard to like. So what I've been trying to do is go back, put myself in the mindset of when I was watching this episode, what I thought, rather than the hindsight ability that you have, which is very difficult. Which I imagine is sort of the same with you in usual when it comes to these sort of things. But yeah, so watching an anime together for the first time is probably the best way to get like an idea of how you're both interpreting it differently. But yeah, I was just say it's an interesting one because with like Subaru's and Amelia's relationship and how that goes forward and the dynamics and how that develops, especially with like the next couple episodes after this as well. Like you said, it wasn't enough, and I feel like you may be satisfied later on because without spoilers being as vague as I can, the kicking of Subaru from other characters may continue for a little while, and maybe this conversation is just the doors opening.
And I guess, and that's great to hear, and it's assuring to me. I suppose one of my problems with that is that all of this probably should have just happened much, much sooner and not 8+ hours in. Like I feel like if you had essentially condensed this significantly, and if this kind of development were happening around like an episode 8 or a 9, right? Maybe even a little sooner than that, where it started meaningfully getting called out in these ways, then I would feel a lot more confident and good about those decisions. But as of now, it's like, oh, we're 8 hours in this, and it's hardly touching on it in the ways that matter most. So they might get around to it, but why wasn't it earlier? Why did we have to deal with like there was a little bit of character development of Subaru early on, but then that feels like it largely then steps backward a few steps for episodes like 9 through 12, basically, where he almost is a Flanderization of himself. He loses all sense in the episodes, especially when they get to the capital, of being a rational or even semi-rational actor who cares a lot, to just being so stupid, just monumentally stupid, not just reckless, but willfully irrational in ways that it's unsympathetic. It's not, the way it feels to me and way it lands for me isn't, he has a heart of gold, but it's just his execution is flawed and he messes it up there. But he means well. It's like, no, the flaws are so deeply wound in there. It's not, he just has a heart of gold, but he's a little bit misled. It's that, I don't even enjoy watching this character at this point because they're just being foolish for no explicable reason.
That is the point. I would say definitely that is like the point. Because when I first started watching ReZero, my first two reactions, people would literally comment on the video and say, "Welcome to one of my most like diversive main characters you're ever going to experience." Where people who watch ReZero will hate Subaru. They'll be like, he's driving them crazy. And I think the capital is especially one of those moments where people are like, this character, what's he doing? He's fucking up everything. This guy is ridiculous. And like that is the whole point. You're not, no one likes Subaru in that scene. He does everything wrong. And he's completely acting irrationally, and he is acting completely selfishly, and he does think, look at me, I'm Captain Knight Subaru, I'm in charge, everyone should be paying attention to me, I'm Amelia's knight. And it's like that he has no reason for all of this, and he, disrespects all the knights there and everything like that. And he gets let off easy, and because the knights feel sorry for him. Can't remember the name of the main knight. What looks horrific is actually him saving him. And that is the point. It's because with the things you need to always remember, because Subaru's attitude changes all the time, is Subaru is experiencing something that if any normal person experienced, because it's something I said at the end of watching ReZero, we'd all be in a corner, shaking, crying, broken down, and he relives these moments, dies, goes through death, relives it again, goes through all these horrific stories. So every time he comes back, his attitude is completely different because he's just changing as a person, and he is a kid dealing with all of this as well. So it's hard, but it's important to make sure you don't look at him as like a fully developed adult in this world, approaching all of this logically. You need to think of this as an impulsive teenager with hormones and excitement and just like completely irrational thought in this world, acting how a kid would in this world with all this crazy stuff going on. And that's what it is. That's why he falls in love with Amelia, and he's just a total idiot there because he doesn't understand what love is. He's never experienced it before, and he's just like, oh, I'm the knight. I love Amelia. That's it, done. That's the story. That's how it is. So that's just what he tells everyone. He's like, Amelia's mine. I'm blah, 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 blah. And it's irrational, and it goes through that. But I also find it interesting, your same reasons, like, because the fastness of season 1, it is very fast. Chucks you in, very fast paced.
I would wildly disagree with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no. So with Remington, he's an interesting creature.
Okay,
wow.
so what Sean is going to say is that I hate slow-paced things, which is inaccurate.
That's not what I'm going to say. That was not what I was going to say. Okay?
All right.
So I have this notion of efficient and inefficient storytelling, right?
Okay.
And I can enjoy things that are slower or faster paced. I would argue that ReZero is a bit on the slower paced end because I think big picture, like in all of these many episodes I've seen, not a ton has happened. Like things have happened, but it's not a huge list.
Is that because of, do you look at it, because when I look at ReZero's pacing, I look at it as every death is still going forward. But with you, do you look at it more as amount of time passed? So with ReZero, if he's died like 20 times, but he's only on like day 3, do you look at it as only 3 days have passed, we've watched 8 hours, that's fuck all, this is
No.
But whereas
I definitely, I view it, I think, comprehensively. Basically, I'm just viewing like the time I spend with it, right? And what it has done in that time.
You are so gonna hate season 2. I was literally gonna say, because the way you were talking about like how you felt with like dialogue scenes and this sort of stuff, I was like, oh, he's probably gonna love season 2, because season 1, in my opinion, is very fast paced, very like action heavy, especially the second half of season 1. And season 2, the first half of season 2, much slower, very character focused. Like and like that's why so many people love.
I suppose that this is a distinction to draw. I don't think that being action heavy first is necessarily fast paced, right? Because I agree, it is very action heavy. It has a lot more of those kinds of scenes, but the vast majority of those more action packed scenes feel like relative filler to me. They're not accomplishing a whole lot. They're not moving things forward in a meaningful way, or if it does say something in those types of scenes, that it will take much longer than perhaps it should to say. It ends up feeling a bit drawn out. So even though I agree that, like, is it so far action-packed? Sure, I suppose so. But it's still, I would argue, a bit slower paced because I'm looking at those more narrative goals in the grand scheme of things, and that's how I sort of judge pacing. But at the same time, which also means that something being very dialogue heavy, you can have something, in my opinion at least, being very fast paced if you have a lot of dense, cutting conversations. A lot of things are still moving fast in the narrative, right? And it's a lot is happening within the narrative. But I also don't think I think both pacings, fast and slow, can be compelling and very interesting. I think that what's more important is whether it's efficient or inefficient in telling those stories. And that for me is just, all right, in these moments that you've provided me, what did I get out of them? And if you're like, okay, out of this 25-minute episode, all that I got was learning a little bit of backstory for one character, then that's not going to be very efficient. Meanwhile, if you're like, in that 25 minutes, you establish backstory, which is then relevant to their development in the current character, which now you understand their relationship to these characters on a deeper level. That pushed the plot forward on this front. It also complicated it over here. And it's like, okay, now you're doing a lot of meaningful things with that time, not just pushing the narrative forward, but developing those characters, developing those relationships. And so they're kind of like three separate boxes for me of like action-oriented or dialogue and character-focused, fast-paced, slow-paced, efficient storytelling, and inefficient storytelling.
It's interesting because something you didn't actually say is exactly how I would describe season 1 of ReZero. And that is emotional character development. I don't feel like season 1 is about, let's tell you the backstories and relationships and everything going on with these characters and what they're doing and that sort of stuff. I feel like it really likes to leave it all in mystery because it is an anime that it does leave so many questions up in the air where you're supposed to be watching and going, what's this character doing? What are they doing? Where are they from? Even now, still watching it, I don't know so much about so many characters, and it will just drip feed you their backstory because it wants to keep this mystery there because you don't realize how much is all connected and the world and everything like that. And I feel like with ReZero season 1, for me, why I loved it so much was for episode 1 to the final episode of season 1. If you look at every character's emotional development, that I would say is some of the most significant I've seen in any anime, where you just get to see them change emotionally, and it's more about how the circumstances around them, the actions they're doing, and other people are affecting their emotional state. They're especially with Subaru, that's his whole story. It's all about his emotional development as a character, especially for a teenager. And I think if you like that sort of dialogue, well-written dialogue, and more development, that sort of side, season 2 is going to be really curious, because for me it sounds like it could be 50-50 with you. You might, the first half, you might just fall in love with and go, this is exactly what I wanted, ticking all the boxes for me, I'm getting everything I wanted. Because I won't spoil it, but the first half is literally just will give you a lot of the answers, and it will feed you a lot of this character development and that sort of stuff. And in the second half, it's sort of where I think most people fall in love with it, which I reckon will be where you'll be a bit season 2 started off strong, but the ending became all cliche and
yeah. It's hilarious because I also watched your full watch through of ReZero to get an idea of where you stood for this episode, and some of the points that you've repeated here, I'm just like, oh yeah, no, you know exactly. You're so far you're actually kind of reading him pretty well, because I would wager episode 4 of season 2. The one with the parental stuff.
Oh yeah, the one that I personally wasn't a huge fan of. I liked it, but I was I thought it felt a bit out of place. That one, right?
Yep. It's one of my favorites, and I think Remington would probably really enjoy that one himself.
Everyone, but then again, everyone loves that episode.
Yeah.
Because when it finished, I was like, because there's a lot going on, and I was sucked in. I was like, oh man, there's so much going on. And in this episode, they were like, pause. And we would like to take a moment to tell you about this. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, let's learn about this. So it's an episode that is amazing, but I was on the train and I felt like we stopped off and we were and they were like, go get some lunch. And then we got back on the train. That's what episode 4 felt like to me. It's a great episode. But yeah, and then I remember the comments were like, fucking doesn't appreciate. When it comes to flashbacks, I'm always so a good example. Have you, Sean, I'm guessing Remington hasn't, but have you seen Free Ren? Are you watching it?
Oh yeah, I love it. It's so good.
So with Free Ren, going off tangent a little bit here, Free Ren, for me, is an example of an anime that does flashbacks really well. because it's not like full dedicated episodes. They're like a minute long, very well done, where it will be like middle of a battle, quick flashback, back to the battle, or something like that. And I've complimented so many times with Fru, and I'll say this is how you do flashbacks. Like, it's like keeps with the pacing. You never get off the train. It's perfectly slotted in. And so whenever there's a flashback, I think Hellsing Ultimate did this a couple of times. Whenever there's a flashback that's like, here's a story for 15 minutes, then we'll get back. And one thing I really don't like is when an episode ends on a huge cliffhanger. You start the next episode, it sort of revisits that cliffhanger at the beginning, maybe shows you one other scene, then we'll have 15 minutes of flashback when it already ended on a cliffhanger, and then we'll have like a sort of 2-3 minute like update and then end again. And it for me, I just feel like they're blue balling you. They're just like trying to long out this huge scene.
Yeah,
and those
Luke,
kind of flashbacks.
It's as if you wrote the transition naturally for me. Because episode 10, we have a little bit more of Hellhound stuff. This time with Ram and Subaru going in. Rem is still in there. Subaru's been cursed a bunch, and they need to kill all of the baddies in the forest. And as they reconvene, Rem and Subaru with Rem, she's in her demon form, going a little bit crazy. They need to stop her demon form by hitting her horn. They do a little bit of craziness. Subaru is right about to hit her horn. And then episode 11 is a very long flashback sequence. all about Rem and Ram's backstory and lore.
See, for me, this is one of those it's so funny how it's like I'm different. Because like this one did not stand out to me as one that felt out of place.
It does seem to fit a lot of your description of leave on an intense cliffhanger and then be like, we'll get to that, but first.
See,
maybe it's the intensity of the flashback that like makes me not like go too out of place. I don't know, what were you gonna say, Sean?
Well, I mean, there's an easy answer here. It's because it's about Rem. We love Rem.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, Subaru, but Rem,
yeah.
Fantastic.
Through this backstory, we learn more about Rem and Ram's dynamic. I think I am ambivalent towards this backstory and slightly opposed to it being a big dump, because I even wrote in my notes I would have preferred a little bit more mystery and natural storytelling as opposed to at moments cliche backstory exposition dump. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I think they're capable of doing better. I think that's the root of a lot of my critiques of ReZero, is that they have some moments that I adore and that I think are fantastic, but then those are juxtaposed with moments that fall into a lot of the same lazy cliches and clunky storytelling methods. And I'm like, oh, come on. I've seen that you're capable of better. I've seen that. I've seen the heights. I just want to live in those more consistently. And so it's the inconsistency of the quality, in my opinion, that possibly frustrates me the most.
Oh, Rem, you sound like such a disappointed father. Like, I felt like I was back in high school talking to my dad about wanting to be a theater kid.
Come on, you're smarter than this.
It's funny. I'm just looking at like the pictures of season 1, because I'm like, I've got some refreshers on the left.
Yep.
And while you were saying that, I was just looking. I was going, "Fuck, I love this." I was just like, God. I was just looking at all these pictures. I was like, God damn, it's so good.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, I just can't.
Honestly,
because for me,
thank God
I'd say
you're on this episode, because the first episode we did on ReZero, I ended with overall positive feelings about it. And so, you know, there was a minor controversy and backlash, but not a ton. Now I'm just hoping that anybody who would be mad at me is instead just very happy with your opinions, Luke.
Yeah, well, it's so for like I said, for me, with the flashback with episode 11, I'm definitely on the opposite side of the fence, where I'm not a huge fan of flashbacks, and this is like, it's a meme within my community. where if there's a flashback in an anime, people are like, ah, shit, Luke hates the anime. It's like, I'm not a big fan of them in general. It's hard for me to like them because I feel like if the story is being told and you have any kind of flashback, it's going to take you out of the story. But Free Ren is an example of how to do this amazing. And I think no anime I've seen does it better than Free Ren. People would argue season 2 of ReZero, they'll say, that's how you do it. And everyone loved that. And for me, I liked that, but I preferred the second half of season 2 of ReZero to the first half, whereas most people preferred the first half to the second half. So it's going to be interesting where you feel on that.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a revisit sooner rather than later just to get him caught up.
But with like we said, with episode 4, that felt more like so much was happening. I won't spoil it, but with the Sanctuary. And I was very invested in all of that, especially with how fast-paced season 2 starts. That when that episode hit, for me, I was like, please, I need the answers to everything else. Why are you doing this to me? But with episode 11, I felt like it was the opposite. It was like, considering how important Rem and Ram become with like the prior 2 episodes and us knowing nothing about them, and Rem sort of taking center stage here, I feel like episode 11 did a good job at like highlighting why like they're so close, like Rem's guilt and why that, and that again draws the parallels between why Subaru and Rem become so close. It's because Rem is burdened by all this guilt and everything she's gone through, and she's very like emotionally unstable and broken in her past, and it's very similar to Subaru, who goes through everything he goes through, can't share it with anyone, is emotionally broken. And I feel like you end up getting these 2 really emotionally broken, sweethearted characters. And you don't understand it from Rem because she just seems like, until now, she's closed off and ice cold. And then when this happens, you realize the real Rem finally breaks through. And she just, you know, unburdens on someone. And it's just like so relieved to be able to tell someone about what she's going over with, which again bleeds into episode 12. And I feel like that just cements that relationship between Subaru and Rem, which I would argue is literally a core relationship to the story development of the entire anime, especially later on. Them.
Oh, undeniably. And I don't really disagree with anything you said. That's why, like, even with my critiques, it still ends up being that I am ambivalent towards that. I see a lot of merit. There are just some drawbacks for this specifically.
What's really fascinating about this series in particular, and this amazing conversation we've been having, is that Remington in particular, my dear friend, love of my life.
This is how you break up.
Yes.
He's right about to break up with me and try proposing to you, Luke. So be prepared.
Yeah. Luke, I like you a lot, but this guy.
Sean is like, holy shit, having a co-host who doesn't bash everything I love.
Yeah. But the thing that I want to point out is my dear friend Remington does not mince words, but all of Remington's critiques for this anime in particular have been pinpoint. They've been little individual things that, if they were tweaked in a different way, he would have a better experience overall. Because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Rem, but I think overall you are pretty okay with this anime.
Basically, my arc for this episode of the podcast is nearly identical to our first episode we did on it, which was, this is starting out rough. Oh my god, this isn't very good. Oh, okay, it actually has quality and merit to it. And so, yeah, I suppose my biggest, like, overall critique of it would just be the inconsistency. And I would love, if anything, like, a remake of at least this, like, first season of ReZero that just tightens it up in certain parts, makes it more consistent in quality. Because ReZero is, as I've mentioned, capable of some really cool things that are refreshing and they feel new and original and nuanced. I just want that level of quality to be pasted throughout.
Which I think is a fair critique.
Well, I was gonna say it's fair, but the way I look at it is the sort of madness of ReZero is on purpose. Where, like I've mentioned, it's not an anime that's going to, like, it's not like a step-by-step anime. It's not, this is where the story starts, it's here we go, story ends. Like, it's not like, you know, Violet Evergarden, for example, where you're going to have a single season, one contained story, well-fledged out, here's the whole anime story, right? And it's like, this is your book. Take it, put it in a book, done, read it. All the information you need is there. With ReZero, it felt more like, and it still feels like it now, and again, this is the word I'll always use, it's a mystery. So when I was watching season 1, when you're like saying, it leaves this out, it doesn't go into this enough, and it does these sort of things. For me, if I looked at it so differently, where I'd be watching it going like, hungry. I'd be like, why did you not tell me this? Why didn't you do that? Why was this only explained for 5 fucking seconds? Why are you doing this to me? And it more is like a build up for the payoff. So that it wasn't something that I was so much watching and critiquing. It was similar to when I watched Attack on Titan, where the mystery was what I fell in love with. And with ReZero, it was exactly the same, where it's like, the fact that it left out all this stuff, the fact that it didn't give me everything I wanted, that it teased me, is why I fell in love with it. And then by the end of season 2, I feel like it does a really good job at tying up a lot of the stuff with season 1, sort of like a spider's webs, everything comes together. And it's just, again, same with Attack on Titan. When you finally finish it, everything clicks and you're like, shit, everything makes sense. And it felt the same with ReZero, where it's like season 1 and 2 click. And then all of a sudden, which you'll see, it just takes off new tendrils. Going. And I feel like that mystery element is something that makes me fall in love with this, and I think makes a lot of people
and with that element
it doesn't give you answers.
Of the mystery, like I adore mystery. That's probably my favorite element of ReZero, but I like the or at least often, not always, sometimes it nails the execution delightfully and I'm all in. But I like the idea of the mystery it's trying to craft often more than I like the actual how it is actually handled. I feel like very often it can end up being, to use a nice little mystery metaphor, a little bit more Sherlock Holmes and a little less Agatha Christie, just in terms of how it shapes and develops its mystery and how it reveals that mystery.
I think you have to also look at it and because the whole story is through the eyes of Subaru. You're on his journey, you're like piggybacking him. So we have to remain as ignorant, as clueless, and as childish as Subaru is on this journey as well. So a lot of what, like, as a viewer, we don't have that same mindset. So we might be like questioning a lot of things that are happening. But because we're following Subaru on this journey and his ignorance through this mystery, we might be pointing out things like, this is clearly obvious. Why hasn't this been explained? That? And it's like, that's because we won't get there until Subaru gets there.
And I 100% freely accept that. I suppose that just doesn't have as much mileage for me as it may for you. Which that's just how things go sometimes. One wild thing that happens in episode 11 that is just, but just right before we transition to the other episodes, after Subaru is like saved and wakes up and Rem is by his side and they chat a little bit about Rem's trauma and everything. There's this crazy moment where Rem is feeling self-conscious. And so Subaru, the way he decides, this is how you comfort Rem, because she's like, I just, my sister's just so much greater than I am. I could never live up to what she could have been. And then Subaru is like, well, hey, your sister is awful at her job and you have bigger tits. So, which is wild. That is a hell of a route to go for comforting somebody.
Hey, it would work on me. I'm very self-conscious about that, so if you need a primer.
One of the more interesting strategies I think you can pull.
I'd say again, it's because it's one of those things that I had to keep getting reminded, because I would say all the time, I don't like Subaru's actions. I would literally say, I don't understand why Subaru's in this way, this sort of thing. And then people always say, he's a kid. So, and again, with that, it's like, he's a kid. He's literally a kid. It is that is what I can imagine a 14, 15-year-old, horny, anime-obsessed teenager would literally be like, how do I compliment someone? It's the giant boobs.
And
they
not
love
just
that.
the
That's
giant boobs, but the fact that your sister's bad at her job. It's that little weird combo piece.
Yeah. It's got if it was too logical, you'd be like, no 15-year-old would say this. Just sits down with a bullet point plan. He's like, Rem, here's one I prepared earlier. This is why you're incredible. So let's start with option number 1. We'll circle back. And it's instead he's just well, you have fantastic boobs. She sucks, and you're amazing.
Do you feel better?
And then
hey, it works. Rem is like, thanks. So apparently that strategy does work. Go and try it in your day-to-day life.
I mean, it might work if you're. It won't work.
You were trying to come up with like some ridiculous but possible example, and you're like, no.
No. Use that, you're doomed. It won't work.
So this is why I'm single. It makes sense now.
Yeah. So then we get into sort of like the capital arc. We meet all the other possible royal candidates and their knights, right? And Subaru's like, well, it has Amelia is gonna win because she's just so goddamn awesome. But there's some like lore reasons that complicate this. There's some both nice drama and just really stupid drama. It does both in these capital scenes. Like it's we get introduced to a broader cast of characters, some nice concepts going on. There's some interesting confrontations and dialogue that's very intriguing, and then also just some that not only do I think it's not intriguing, I don't think it's compelling or good. They live side by side, as in my opinion they too often do in ReZero, and it culminates in the moment we've already discussed, where a Subaru, his loud mouth causes outbursts and embarrassment for Amelia, and that's when she calls him out.
Yeah, something we touched on earlier. Yeah, with the capital arc, it is still considered one of those cementing factors in Subaru as like a where people sort of lose him. I'd say. I think anyone who's a fan of ReZero, this is the arc everyone's sort of waiting for a viewer to get to where the audience sort of you stop feeling sorry for Subaru, which is and then this is where you sort of fall out of love him a little bit, stop feeling sorry for him over like these episodes, and then that will once again. The whole anime is a roller coaster of like love. It builds you up and tears you down, and that is literally the whole devastating journey of ReZero, because that's what Subaru goes through. So sadly, us as a viewer, we have to constantly go through it as well, where we go, Subaru, come on, you can do it, we believe you. But no, that's horrible. This is disgusting. Shit, everything's gone wrong. No. And then 5 episodes of oh my god, and maybe Subaru's coming back. And it's that roller coaster, which I love it because it's terrible torture, and and I hate to love it. That's the thing. I'm sitting there angry and pissed off, but actually loving it.
And I will say, so that I can, I know this is going to be a point that I'm criticized specifically on, because through the capital arc overall. I don't like how they handle Subaru, but not for the reasons I imagine many others have complained about it, which is just that, like, he fucks up and that's unlikable. Because if anything, I think, I think that's a good route to go down right here. And once again, I think the structure and the concept, real solid, real good. I don't disagree with that at all. I disagree with just how poorly justified and developed his big mistakes are, where it especially because it's already falling into a pretty well recognized cliche of let's do these series of well-meaning but impulsive things that are going to build and all come to bite me in the ass, right? It's the plot of any Disney Channel original movie where they lie about their identity. It's very common trope. And so if you're taking this pretty common and a little bit cliche structure, then you need to execute it well. You need to develop it well. If you do so, if it's underdeveloped, then you just have a lazy cliche. And I think that they don't do enough to get out of that. So I like the direction that it takes Subaru's character, but I don't think that the build and development of it is sufficient.
He has a way with words, doesn't he, Luke? He just he knows just what to say to just kind of like be like a little bit of a stab, just a little bit of stab in the heart.
It's just I just find it interesting because I like you will outline all the points that I love, but say you didn't enjoy it, and then I'll be like, oh okay. Like with the Because the way I like, because when I like with you, how you say like it needs to be executed well, it needs to be done well. If he's gonna do this thing where he just makes these series of decisions that, like you said, the whole point in the scene is we're not supposed to like Subaru. We're supposed to see Subaru acting like a dick. No one in that room likes him, and we're supposed to cringe. You're literally supposed to be there like, what are you doing? That's the whole point. But for you, you're saying you get that that's the point, but you feel like the way they went about that was
and I'm supposed to
right.
clarify and help to explain why. Because we've had 13 episodes of character development from Subaru by this point, right? And it feels like this little arc in this episode especially, it feels like it ignores basically all of that, where it feels like he regresses even to like pre-episode 1 stage Subaru. He is at his most foolish, his most impulsive, his most protagonist syndrome, and it doesn't feel like there's a great justification for any of that. It's just, they needed him to make the worst decisions, and so instead of feeling like it's looking back in what's happened to the previous 13 episodes, it's just like, all right, how can we make the worst version of Subaru just be there? And it's like, but why has he regressed so much so suddenly? And I don't think that there's a great reason for that.
For the way I looked at this and the way I'd explain it is, up until this point, every Subaru is the only one who knows that he can return to death. He can't tell anyone about this. So up until this point, when Amelia then, because the whole reason he then decides to go to the capital against Amelia's wishes and all this sort of stuff is literally because he knows that if a bullet is fired at Amelia, if he's in front of it, Amelia will live. But if he's not there, Amelia dies and it's game over. So in this situation, Subaru acts completely irrationally because he's the only one who understands that he is the only one who is cannon fodder. So he has seen, at this point, like you said, with the character development, people that he does like die, get injured, be brutalized, and understands that that can be fixed with his death. So although we've seen this development, we've also seen this understanding where he is learning what he can do and learning how fragile everyone is but him, which is, again, is something that he learns to understand a bit more and value his life later on in the anime. But at this point, his life, he's just like, I can just, and it reset and everyone's fine, but everyone else is in so much danger. So he views himself as this god, but not in like a positive way, where he's the only important thing. He needs to be there. He has to act selfishly because if he's the only one that can save everyone. And that's how he looks. Everyone else is completely weak. He's the only one who can save everyone. Even with his lack of abilities, that's how he views it. So when he goes here, and also his complete infatuation with Amelia, when he goes here, when he puts himself in this situation, he's acting on multiple different things. One is all the emotional turmoil he's gone through, his complete infatuation with Amelia, people talking down to her, which obviously triggers him because he's obsessively in love with her. His understanding of the situation completely, because it's like knowing something for 100% and everyone's telling you you're wrong. Eventually you're just going to break and be like, I know this, you're all fucking stupid, trust me, I know it. And you're trying to convince people, but you can't. That's also going on inside of his head. So in that situation with his character breakdown, it is a stem of past emotions, love for Amelia, the fact that he is a kid handling all of this again, because that is something that people hit home a lot. Subaru is, again, not a develop. He's not like us, how we would be in this situation. He's not an adult. He is a child. He's still developing emotions and feelings, and he has no life experiences. I mean, if you think of him as, I think he's 15, isn't he? If you think of
he's actually 17, nearly 18.
17, nearly 18. So he's still in teenage years. If you think about like when you're 12 to like you're still like a kid to now this. He's had like 5 years of like school experiences and that sort of stuff. Still like going through all those teenage experiences. So he's going to handle all of that as a teenager. He's obsessively in love. He's gone through this breakdown. So I feel like in the capital scenes, his like random outbursts, for me, it felt like it kind of made sense. And it may seem like completely out of character because it's like we've had all this development. Why is he acting like this? But for me, it was more like he's never been in a situation like that before. His mind, he's now in a completely different mindset where he understands how fragile everyone is, but he can't explain it to everyone. And he's obsessively in love with Amelia. So it felt more justified, and it made a lot more sense than
I
me,
guess it's less
that
it doesn't fit his character in a vacuum, and more so it doesn't fit the movement of his character throughout the story. Essentially, like throughout the story, right, different events will push a character different ways, will alter their personalities one way or another, right? That's the nature of storytelling. And it feels like while Subaru's character has been moving overall one direction, but with a few hiccups here and there, very suddenly, and with like all of the things you use to explain why he behaves like this, the vast majority of those are reasons that have just been present throughout the entire show. And so it's like, okay, so why does he so suddenly move so much and regress so far on this little character journey of his? In isolation, it might make sense, but when you see it as movement from where he just was and where he has been, you're like, oh, that's a monumental shift. So surely something significant must have caused it. And it's like, not really. It just kind of happened that way. And I'm like, oh, okay. Is it just that his character is that inconsistent where there's, at that point, there feels like there's almost no tether? Because that doesn't seem like that would be a proper way. Even if you have even if you have a generally inconsistent character, I don't think you want them to be able to swing that wildly from side to side for zero justification or reason, because then you just lose a sense of character. And so it's less so viewing that moment in isolation, and more so viewing that moment contextualized through what has happened thus far.
Okay. So, I would say with like you said, looking at it as it is, you looking at it, how it's everything's happened with Subaru's deaths, everything leading up to that moment. That's how you're looking at with the character development at that situation. Seems a bit out of character for Subaru. But I think if you look at the fact that it's not a normal character, so with Subaru, with a normal character development of any anime you see, the character's not dying. They're not experiencing death. They're not experiencing pain. They're not able to not share that with someone. Then they're not living like on a different trajectory. And I think the reason ReZero, like with Subaru, is so brilliantly written is because of that inconsistency. Is because instead of him going into these situations with he's learning things, he's like, okay, I've died this many times, etc., which I don't think would be normal. I'd say in the inconsistencies is where it becomes better, like where it actually becomes well written, is because how he acts. Like I said, most people will be in a corner crying, broken down, done. Like, because if you look at it from like an anime sense, then he should just be like, all right, I'm picking myself up, I'm dusting myself off, I've learned from my mistakes, I've learned all this, I've died of that, right, I've leveled up. But from ReZero's sake, it's more, I've gone through these painful, horrific deaths, I've been brutalized, I've been fucked over, and he's just emotionally broken. There's no consistency in his mind because there wouldn't be. He's just constantly, he's living like so many different paths, so many different things, going through so many different experiences, and we're always seeing Subaru approach something, and he's in different Subaru, because he's not like character on day 100. He's a character that's like been pushed around to the side, reset, pushed back, lived different moments, different experiences. So every time he approaches a situation, he's not approaching a new situation learning. He's approaching a situation and then dying and then like being knocked off track and then going over here. Approaching the situation again, knocked track over here. And it's always like, you're always seeing a different Subaru because he's not following one path of character development. He's pushed back. So there's no consistency in his character. And that is, I'd say it's realistic. I'd say that no consistency, if there was a consistency in his development, if like he did just go to this situation and he was a completely different character, it wouldn't have made any sense, because if you're dying and like actually dying and like experiencing all this horror, then in that moment, after you've gone through everything you've gone through, the person you're in love with goes, by the way, I'm going to the capital, you stay here, blah, blah, blah. In that moment, you're just going to break and be like, I've just spent like a week dying, trying to sort this shit out. And now you're leaving and I can't come and I'm the only one who can reset time. That can't happen. So he just, in that moment, everything goes out the window. He's like, I don't know what to do here, blah, blah, blah. Complete panic and crazy. And I felt like that was very well done just because of that.
I mean, I agree with you on that front, but I think this is genuinely just God is neutral as it sounds, it's just definitely a difference in opinion on how we interact with the story. Because me as a longtime anime fan, I'm like with you 100%, Luke. But with my lovely cynical counterpart who is not as inundated in like the enjoyment of storytelling in anime, he very much is coming from a place where the nuances in ReZero are wonderful and fantastic to us as somebody who loves watching anime and watching new series and seeing the differences between them. But for my co-host, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, because that's your favorite thing to do, Remington. Even if I don't think I'm wrong, you usually correct me if you think I am. It is very much a situation where the way what we loved about the scene just isn't quite good enough in a traditional narrative way that would be satisfying. It's the Sherlock Holmes versus Agatha Christie thing all over again.
Yeah, I suppose from my perspective, I would say that it seems like, from what I've watched and everything, Luke, I would say that you are taking more than the show is giving, right? And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I think that a lot of the most compelling parts of your description of ReZero, I think that the show doesn't actually capitalize and emphasize those moments as strongly, as meaningfully as you are taking it to be. And that is not to say that you are making a mistake or a misstep, because that is the nature of all art. But I think that it kind of muddies the waters of, like, once again, that idea of ReZero, right? Which is a wildly fascinating one, that thinking through it and viewing it in its, like, ideal form is insanely compelling, and it has a lot going for it, versus the show with all of its limitations and its, like, adaptational struggles and its flaws that make it so that it may not always hit those ideals. And I suppose that in large part, you see what it's going for, and you take all of what it's going for, rather than what it is, if that distinction makes sense.
Maybe.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, after the little capital arc, we transition into episodes 14 and 15, which for me, the strongest episodes of this little batch, certainly. Because basically, Amelia has left Subaru. Goodbye. She's going back home, and she leaves Subaru with Rem. And he's kind of going crazy, getting really bitter and angry. I'm digging where this is going. This is compelling and interesting, and I wish this had happened earlier. Eventually, it's like, oh, something is... Amelia is in danger. There's some people potentially after her. They get some intel. Rem is getting some telepathic messages, kind of, from her sister. And so, they go. And, unfortunately, Subaru gets left. He gets left in a different village as Rem goes and handles it. So that, Subaru, he rushes back to the mansion, now not only worried about Amelia, but now also very worried about Rem. And as he arrives, the nearby village is completely massacred, and indeed, the mansion itself has been brutalized by what I will refer to as the Ninja KKK, and the Magical Ninja KKK.
I was gonna say, can we get some magical in there?
And he finds some passageways, and there's this trapped passage, and he thinks maybe he'll find Amelia there, but he ends up dying of frostbite with all of the traps. He resets back at the market, and he's panicked, he's spooked. He goes again, but this time handling things a bit differently so that he's going along with Rem. And unfortunately, it does not go better like he may have wanted, because instead of finding the carnage, instead he is swept up within it as this group of cultists take him, kidnap Subaru, and we meet the incarnation of Sloth, or whatever the fuck he is.
Yep.
And he's an absolute crazed madman. I love his energy it kind of feels like it's energy of a different show, but that's fine. I'm vibing with the crazy energy. He's sadistic, manic. Eventually, Rem shows up, ready to kick ass, save Subaru, and then Sloth just immediately kills her. Just immediately, like, bends her neck backwards, bends all of her limbs backwards. Nice, completely messed up moment. It turns out she's still weirdly alive a little bit, and she comforts and frees Subaru before they die together. And there's also this giant, like, wolf or cat or something that tells him to sleep. We don't know at this stage. Who knows what's going on there? But, you know, big, mysterious, awesome. So episodes 14, 15. Oh my god! All right, there we go. we're getting more character focused, more mysterious. Just so much more compelling than the other episodes previously.
I think these are two of the strongest episodes. 15 especially highlighted in ReZero, simply because we've seen Subaru battle, like, struggle and fail and fail and fail. And I feel like in these two episodes, you really get an idea of his mindset and his body. It's like Subaru has this mindset where he acts like a hero, thinks he's a hero, but is completely fucking incapable with his body. And in this, you get that, like, devastation. You get, like, Subaru just willing the world to just help him and just begging for, like, strength from somewhere. And I feel like you see that. I can't remember if it's happened yet. I don't think it's happened yet, but you see that later on, especially with the second half of season 1. It hasn't happened yet, so I'll be quiet. But, like, with that, how much he comes to understand about just how weak he actually is on his own. And I feel like this is such a huge turning point for him, where he just realizes he's this big. And he just wants to help people, and he really thinks he's the one who, if he's there, that's how everything gets solved. And I just love this for its absolute horror. I'm pretty sure I cried. Like, it's just fucking horrible. It's a horrible scene. The 2 episodes are horrible. It gives you no, like, happiness, no satisfaction other than the incredible OST to end on. You're just like, it just ends and you just sit there depressed. It's like, and I feel like that is good. That's good. Like, there's like some of my favorite episodes of TV. You don't need to, not every episode you need to go, it's amazing. I feel like ending an episode sitting there in silence that's a showcase of what's done really well. And I think just seeing Subaru sit there in the snow, his head falling off, the OST coming down, you just watching all the credits, you're gonna stare and they're like, this is fucking horrible. It's just like, it's so important for everything now. And it's just like, and it just, as a viewer as well, I feel like you get caught up in Subaru's sauce. You know, sometimes Subaru is swinging his big dick around and you're like, damn, it is the biggest in the town. And you start believing him as well. You're like, this guy, he's packing. And then you as the viewer get, like, sucked back into it. No, see, he's not. He's just like, and I feel like this is one of those episodes where you realize Subaru's heart, you realize the importance of relationship with Rem, you realize how much bigger the world is, how much horror is in this world. You get so much more attached to all these characters. It's amazing how just, like, 40 minutes of TV could just, like, squeeze your damn heart.
Yeah, for sure.
And all the stuff.
And I think I end up
all the stuff with Rem.
I end up with a weirdly mixed opinion of ReZero. It's probably, like, some of the most complicated feelings I've had about any anime we've covered. Because with episodes like 14, 15, I really enjoyed episodes like 6 and 7. When we covered it the first time, to a certain extent, episode 13, though that one it has a lot that I like, though it falls a little bit in some respects. All of that, oh baby, that I'm all in on. I think that's when the ideals match with the execution, when it knows not only what it wants to be, but it hits that landing perfectly. Basically, all of the other episodes, basically the other 10 episodes, I've not been a huge fan of. And so it puts me in a weird position of not really liking 2/3 of ReZero so far, but really, really liking 1/3.
And with those complicated feelings, Remington, I hate to, cut this short. It's not like we've been recording for nearly 2 hours because it's just been such a good conversation. But to wrap things up a little bit, what we like to do on the show, Luke, is there's a anime website called My Anime List, MAL for short, and it's basically just a big forum where for years people would put their reviews for different anime seasons and whatnot, and the compilated ratings get a score out of 10. And we like to throw a little bit of a guessing game here at the end to think of what the general anime populace thinks this show is rated.
I feel like I remember what it was 5 years ago, and so I actually have a benchmark right now.
But it could have changed in those 5 years.
I think, if anything, it's become more beloved over time. And so I think on Mal it's going to be like 8.39.
Do you have any guesses?
I can only speak from my personal experience of ReZero, but for me, I'm fairly confident, as it should be, is 10 every episode, the whole way through. You know, it's like just 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Of course. You know, and just like yeah. I think I'm super biased because I honestly just fucking love this anime. It's incredible. It's one of my favorite isekai. But what episode am I saying, or just all of them, or what do you mean?
Yeah, just like the first season. What you think the first season has rated?
It's got to be in the 9s. It has to be in the 9s. Just 9 on the nose. It's got to be, right? Surely. It's one of the most beloved. It's one of the most beloved fucking isekai in the world. It has to be.
Oh man, I encourage you to look at myanimelist.com after this and just look at the top anime of all time, and you'll be.
Wait. Hold on. Before I give the number, I just remembered because I kicked off about this. Someone gave me a list of the top like 15 or top 10 isekai, and ReZero was 8th out of top 10. I think it was. It was like fucking 8th, and I was literally, I'd seen most of the anime on that list, and out of all the isekai I've seen, there's only one I was like that. I think it was above it that I was like I can give credit to that, and that was Mushoku Tensei, and that is just because the writing of Mushoku Tensei and its uniqueness. A lot of people do really love it, but it is also very controversial because of some of the scenes. And I was like. Obviously, I'm currently watching Overlord, so I'm going to ignore Overlord for a second. But fucking, I couldn't believe how low down ReZero is when amongst, it seems like it is the most beloved isekai. But yeah, with that in mind, then the fact that it's 8 out of 10, I literally just remembered. Your reaction has swayed me a little bit here, though, so I'm going to stick with 9. But if you didn't react and it made me remember, I probably would have said like 7. I probably would have said 7.3, but I will stick with 9.
All right. Well, currently on my anime list, ReZero has had about 1.4 million ratings since it first aired, which it's a lot.
So 10.
You know, in my heart and in yours, yes, 100%. But unfortunately, the weebs on Mal seem to be a little disagreed, because on Mal, with that 1.4 million ratings, it is sitting nice and pretty at 8.23 out of 10.
Oh, it's gone down since our first episode.
I would say that's really good. I'm surprised it's gone down because season 2 is ridiculously loved as well, like more so than season 1. But I'd say 8. That's a good rating.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic rating. It's very, very highly rated. And just to clarify, this is only talking about the first season specifically. The second season has a different rating entirely.
Oh yeah, of course. Where's the isekai list?
There are so many out there. There's so many out there.
Konosuba, that time I got reincarnated as a slime. ReZero and Mushoku Tensei seem to be the beloved isekais, I would say, what I'm noticing on this list.
That's pretty accurate.
And all very good.
I'm familiar with 3 of those. I unabashedly like one of them. Have mixed feelings, obviously. Complicated feelings about ReZero. Negative feelings about Konosuba. Don't know the other one.
What, Mushoku Tensei?
Yeah.
You don't know yet.
Yeah, we haven't covered it yet because I'm scared to.
That's going to be interesting. Mushoku Tensei is, because when I start reacting to it, you'll get drop off very quick.
Yeah.
You like, it's one of those anime that after like episodes 3 or 4, people just go, this is so, fuck it, I'm out. And they just click it. That's it. There's it's the most sus. It's definitely the most sus anime I've seen.
Yeah.
But I would like to recommend, if you haven't seen it already, something that maybe Remington might like, would be Made in Abyss. Based on your opinions and what I've gathered from you this episode, I'd say you might be a fan of Made in Abyss.
Oh, it's on the list, believe me. I've wanted to show it to him for a while. It's just it hasn't been the right time. You know what I mean?
You do need to make sure you've got a good anime arsenal.
I'm gonna hold you to that when the inevitable Made in Abyss episode happens. All right, I'll be thinking of you.
I'm serious. After hearing everything you have to say, after analyzing you now, based on what I've seen, I would say Made in Abyss.
Okay.
So, and I'm interested to see your take on that, because it's very weird, very unique, but it's like season 1 of Made in Abyss. Personally, I think is some of the best fucking anime I've seen.
Ooh.
I think season 1 is incredible. Season 2, everyone loves more than season 1. Personally, I didn't. I preferred season 1. I think the ending of season 2 is fucking incredible. But I think season 2 overall, I just thought season 1 was a masterpiece. I fucking loved it. Season 1's incredible. So I mean, I feel like you might like that. But I'm a sucker for enjoyment. So I immerse myself, and most of my reviews are positive.
Yeah.
I only have like 3 anime that I wasn't a huge fan of, and that's Hellsing Ultimate. Madoka Magica, I really want to rewatch after I've seen more Magical Girl anime, because I feel like that one was a bad choice for a first watch, so I kind of want to give that a go again. And Steins Gate was like the third anime I ever saw.
Oh god, that's not a gateway anime. That's like
I know, and so Steins Gate and Madoka Magica, I feel like I fucked up at. I need to go back and watch them. I need to go back and watch them again in a year's time. I feel like I could watch Steins Gate again now, actually, because I watched that ages ago. But Hellsing Ultimate just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
It's too unnecessarily horrible. The dialogue is randomly placed, and the comedy is randomly placed. And although people love it, wasn't for me.
Hey, just watch the abridged series instead. It's much more entertaining.
I have been told that.
But with that in mind, Luke, we super appreciate you coming on the show and being willing to talk about this and dealing with his cynical ass.
No, I've always said this. The world would be so unbelievably boring if we all came on here and we were all just like, so what do you think of ReZero? It was great, 10 out of 10. It was great. All right, cool. Bye. Like that's boring. So everyone needs to have a difference in opinion, and there's not a single person you'll meet on this planet that shares the exact same opinions on you as everything you like. You can't sit down with any other person on this planet, list out your favorite things, and they'll say their favorite things.
Yeah,
so,
I think there was great conversation to be had. Fantastic having you on. Feel free to, once again, shout out everything. Tell people where they can find you.
You can find me in this room. First, it's much like the One Piece. It's much like the One Piece. I have hidden me somewhere on the world in this room, and there is a big treasure under my ass, and first person to find me can get the treasure and become Pirate King, or whatever it's about. If you want to find me, just Google G.O.T games. I'm sure I'll pop up somewhere. And I do mainly OnlyFans, so there you go.
Perfect.
I've been subscribed for a while.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
very lucrative. It's very good.
It's getting more and more explicit, so as I'm getting braver. So there you go.
Oh well, thank you again so much.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and you are welcome back anytime, because you are wonderful. And I suppose the final question we need to ask, well, the both of you, is y'all interested in watching more ReZero sometime?
Yeah, I'll let Luke answer first, because I mean his answer seems pretty obvious as I ponder mine.
Well, all I can say is they tweeted out a picture of season 3, and my reaction to that picture says it all. I'm pretty fucking excited for season 3. So if it was out now, I wouldn't even be talking to you guys. So yeah, I can't wait.
I think I'm going to say yes, but it's a worried yes. It's a concerned yes. Once again, just because the last 2 episodes I've seen were really solid. And so yet again, just like the first episode we did on ReZero, I'm like, oh, you lost me, but then you caught me right at the end.
Very curious to see and hear your opinions on season 2, considering how different it is to season 1. It is worlds apart, and most people prefer it. So I'm really curious to see if that anchors this anime for you or it drifts further away. So it's curious. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, hey, based on your thoughts and recommendations, I'll rearrange some of my lists and see what we can do about getting him to watch it a bit more frequently. because people keep wanting us to do more revisits, which is understandable. But there's just so much out there. There's so much out there. But yeah, with that in mind, thank you all so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed us actually having another guest on the podcast for once in our goddamn lives, then please leave us a review on wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, or wherever. They mean the world to us, and we do read every single one. And if that is still not enough for you, you can head on over to twitch.tv/animeoutofcontext, where you can watch myself, Dylan, and Remington occasionally play video games very poorly. And if that is still not enough for you, you can head on over to patreon.com/animeoutofcontext, where you gain access to all kinds of lovely bonus material, including having the opportunity to be thanked live on the podcast. And so, Rem, who are we thanking this week?
As always, we would like to send our regards to all of our Bland Bitch protagonists, as well as our magical girls, who we really appreciate. But moving on, we get to our yandere waifus, who are growing horns and swinging flails. And on that list, we have, my name is First Now Bitch. Oops, sorry, I was just overly excited. You're not a bitch, please don't hurt me. Zombie Stomp, Xanax, Yandere Neko, Waishon Waishon, When You Wish Upon a Haruhi, Wes Kane, week 8 of asking for a DBZ review finally, Sean, Walk Me Home Gently, Utah number 1, Unhinged Prax, Tum Yum Cum, Totally God's Angel, Titan CNH. This show is a ploy to get Joe Biden reelected, The Susanator, The Pocket Big Hole You Need in Your Pocket, The Flying Spaghetti Monster, The Danish Viking Will Conquer the World with Roronoa Zora as my navigator, That Guy Who Doesn't Drink Too Much, It's Not an Addiction, I Can Quit Whenever I Want, Turban, Super Zoo, Stacy's Mom, Spoon Man, Fighter of the Knife Man, someone asked me to name a greater philosopher than Nietzsche, I can't. Snaky Pie, Smells Like Weeb, Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life, Shoujo Addict, who doesn't need help, just more manga to read and anime to watch. Sean wants to give Spoon Man a thankin' yang. Sean, honor Toriyama. Sean, you need to yank the Spoon Man as sensually as possible while I thank our patrons. It is the only way I can finish this. Sean told me to fuck my sister, and now my family won't talk to me. Sean ruined my happy sugar life when he got I just really love the Spoon Man. Do you think we made a mistake by just not... I feel like I could have mentioned the Spoon Man to Luke, and, you know, maybe that's just what the episode should have been about.
Look, that's not a first collab conversation. That's like a second or third collab conversation.
If I turned our ReZero revisit into a Spoon Man episode with our guest.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yes.
Sean puts the bar in Cappy,
like,
the Spoon Man comes. Sean is a roly-poly Rollins. Sean, how was your Daki Martra? Get everything you wanted? Hey, you know, it's still... I don't know when this episode's posted, but as of recording, we're still in it. But he is pleased with what he's got so far.
Hey, well...
his only review was not nearly enough, he said. Sean had a lass that could go all night, but he got out of breath when he had to blow her up. Sean can do these nuts. Shadow Cryptid MILF, Seraphim the Shark plushie. Sequoia Kai, that's what she said. Say hi to that guy's girlfriend, think it's Haley? Say hi to my now fiance, Haley. Hey, congratulations! The Haley arc, it's moving forward.
This is why you gotta listen to the Patreon reads, man. You get stories.
I mean, genuinely, with our patrons, you very often do. Like, I feel like our patron reads are like just 3 to 5 mini episodes of just weird strands intersecting and evolving at any given time. Ross Palmer, Riku the Dawn Hero, Rhiannon Williams, Remington is right, Rem uses the drums of liberation free all weeps from bad anime, Rem said April Fool's 2 had a musical episode, so here's $10, Rem doesn't completely hate my favorite shows, R.I.P. Kira Toriyama, Dragon Ball is certainly an OG, pro tips out of context, the moneyed and powerful are only powerful because we agreed to their paradigm, we can stop anytime, Professor Fox, pro wrestling is targeted at the male gaze, policing the Schoolhouse Rock adverb song, lolly 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 get your waifus here, lolly 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 get some waifus here, and then it gets cut off, unfortunately. I was in...
or maybe fortunately.
Fun fact, I was in Schoolhouse Rock Live. That was an experience. Paco El Musico, No Waifu No Laifu, 907, Nick, Necrodancer 1415, Misuka Star Trek Theory is gold-pressed latinum is the space version of steel-cut oats, and Ferengi Ferengi just likes to stay regular. Makeka 7 Hierto, Mermicorn 4, God, we've been talking for 2 hours, I'm broke. Mermicorn Fire, making fake mal account so I can rate Forest Fairy 5 10 out of 10. That's what I should have mentioned. All these things we could have mentioned to Luke. Like how amazing Forest Fairy 5 is. He could have been like the 6th person to watch it. That's
yeah. If he overall has a positive opinion of us after what we did to him today, then maybe that'll be a future thing.
To just be like, hey, I have the perfect thing you should react to on your channel. The reactions would be something.
Oh, they'd be something.
Like it wouldn't. it wouldn't be good for SEO, as we know, but, it'd be a good video in of itself. Macaroni Uchiha, Link Jokerl, Kylo, King Richrock, Cassidy, just watched SAO, Alice Underworld Part 2, Episode 1, yikes, do. Jurgidius, Jax, Jamhands, Icon Scout, I will never get more Ace of the Diamond, now I cry. I was hoping Rem would dislike Eva more than he did and validate my opinion. I tried manscaping with a straight edge razor. I can't believe I made an account for this. Hey Charlie, see you at San Antonio in September. Happy 300 episodes. Sean's stand name should be Try Everything, wink wink. Glenn Michael Dolan, Ginger Weeb, Furble the Burble, Durble, Fantide, Esteban Espino. Ernest Saves Christmas is my favorite anime. Erica McCorkle, do, it's Spoon Man. Daniel Riot, Daddy Rum, tell me a bedtime story. Countrified Goth has emerged from her depression cocoon and decided to change her name. Chungus Wungus Dungus, Cheese Monkey, Celestial Fox, Catgirls are best girls, so give them a cute little pause. Castlevania, though, guys. Capybara level 99 may be a Bara, but I am not a Baka. Brockhart for you dudes, which is scarier, Sean Naked or John Carpenter's The Thing? Both are sensual beyond compare. Bartholomew.
Oh dear.
Bento Kato and my girl seeking tickets to Yam Fest. Love you, Sean. Been a while since I've changed my name on here, but I've got a third 4.0. Can't believe it. And I'm also changing my major from funeral. Angel for a good cause, and every day that Raven comes to visit. Amazing Muffin, AJ Tunnels, Aisha Gucci, Adele Girl, a weeb that likes romance anime, and Dot. Now we move on to the Boy Wizard tier. Sean, tell them what they're gonna get.
And this week they're going to get a video by our lovely guest, Luke of G.O.T. Games.
Go watch it. We expect reports on the video you are assigned by the end of the week. So we start with, what stand is better, D4C or Filthy Acts at a Reasonable Price? I mean, the latter has a better name.
It is true. That is true. Gotta avoid that copyright, yeah. In case you couldn't tell, that's Dirty Deeds done dirt cheap. You're going to get first time ever reacting to Attack on Titan openings.
Whew. Next we have Viper.
You're going to get first time hearing Pentatonic's Hallelujah.
Vincent Calabrese.
You're going to get first time reacting to Overlord openings.
Tails Williams transforms into a hot CPU.
You're going to get first time reacting to Naruto Shippuden openings, all 20 of them. My god.
That Mouse Girl.
You're going to get first time reacting to the best anime openings of all time.
Silent Secondary.
First time reacting to One Piece film Red Ado taught Musica.
Scourge, best $20 spent, LMAO. Whether that is sincere or ironic, thank you.
Yeah, either way, it helps quite a bit. You get, This Is So Messed Up, Attack on Titan, Episode 1.
Ryan and Milena want to play Pathfinder.
First time hearing Lisa Garenge, excuse me.
Roscop.
First time reacting to Jujutsu Kaisen openings and endings.
Remington Chase's laugh is my favorite sound.
Reacting to Yoasobi Idol Oshinoko opening.
Nightshade Blade wants to gush over magical girls.
This one's just a little selfish one for me. First time reacting to Mob Psycho 100 openings.
Netier Aberweren se schon mal in Baden-Württemberg.
Okay. You're going to get Who is Albedo? Overlord Episode 1.
Monogatari is everything you guys said you like in an anime. This week they do things very different way.
You're going to get the next big anime, Solo Leveling.
Mike. Just Mike. Nice and simple.
Okay. Hell yeah. You're going to get, very appropriate, What is this anime? ReZero Episode 1.
Hey. Then we have make new Patreon account Still Shoncho's Rem Healer Girl 1 through 5. Good God. Just give them like a playlist.
Nice and easy. Yeah, no, you're just gonna get all of his reactions to Free Red.
Just there's the whole playlist. Just there you go.
The whole playlist. Yep.
Oh my God.
There are currently 26 episodes out on it. So yeah, we God, I'm feeling more and more guilty by the passing weeks.
Oh man. All right, next we have Latino's 8th anime at age 7 was Devilman, 1972 to 73. It got darker later down the line.
You're going to get his little interview podcast, episode 4 of it, of Getting Off Tempo with Kureiji Ollie. Very good little episode. I watched it last week.
Then we have Kugor.
You're going to get first time hearing BTS Black Swan reaction.
Is Dylan secretly Blitz PhD on TikTok? Sean, check it out.
No, I'm just a generic-looking white boy with long, dark hair who occasionally wears glasses and has a kind of deep voice. There's a lot of us.
Highly doubtful. I think he would burst into flames if he touched TikTok. But you're going to get first time reacting to One Piece openings 12 through 24.
I finally remembered to change this. Now what to make it, Spicitis.
First time hearing Ado Usewa reaction.
Drew, you said my name thrice, so you doomed.
Hoshimashi Suisei, Stellar, the first take reaction.
Demon Ray 13.
First time hearing Dire Straits, Sultans of Swing live.
Crosskirk.
First time hearing Baby Metal, Gimme Chocolate.
Crimson Reapers just because of the scythes.
This is amusing. A British guy reacts to Star Spangled Banner as you've never heard it.
God bless America.
That's fucking funny as fuck, Luke.
Carver 271.
First time hearing Saga of Tanya the Evil opening and endings.
Blood Cell here to remind you that white blood cells are inferior. You need the red ones to thank and yank anyways.
First time reacting to Sword Art Online openings.
If God forbid, if Luke listens to, like, these Patreon reads, he's gonna be like, what the fuck is the Spoon Man? Why is everybody talking about thanking and yanking? What's going on?
And why did he start with popular and then just started going through random ones? Like, what's his plan? How's he suggesting
selection.
videos?
Beethoven 1201.
First time reacting to Naruto openings, 1 through 9.
Anonymous.
First time hearing Toho, Bad Apple.
Anime mashup of the week, A Centaur's Ghoul.
First time hearing BTS on Kinetic Manifesto.
Animated Z.
First time hearing Hatsune Miku, World Is Mine, live Rio Supercell.
All fathers still gushing over magical girls, all hail Kiwi Araga. Araga? I don't know.
Reacting to Creepy Nuts, Bling Bong Bong Born, Mashal opening.
And second to none.
The anime world is crazy, the breathtaking world of One Piece.
Now we move on to the inappropriate Joey Wheeler tier, where Sean will describe in delightful detail how you're gonna die, and I'll tell you where you respawn back to. Nice and cheery.
Jesus Christ.
We start with Rowdy-O.
Yeah. Okay. You're going to be listening to this podcast, and Remington's opinion is going to be so obscene to you that you're going to have an aneurysm and just right then and there.
The terrible thing, you're gonna respawn listening to this podcast with my terrible opinions. It's gonna be just an endless loop, unfortunately, just like moments before, and so you're stuck in an endless loop of hearing my worst opinion to death.
Jesus.
I know, it's fucked up.
That's darker than ReZero.
Next up, we got My Brain is Officially Fried because breasts.
Fair. The tragic way you're gonna die is, smothered by the thing that fried your brain. Sorry, or you're welcome?
But then you are gonna respawn on a carnival date with your old big titty goth GF. Next up, we got Fish Fritz. I can't even do that one as Joey Wheeler. It's just too many. Joey Wheeler doesn't have a lot of sh. Like, that's not a sound he often makes. Let alone that being the whole thing.
Yeah. You're gonna be on Game Changer, and Sam Reich is finally just gonna kill you. He's just gonna kill his contestants. That's the ultimate culmination.
And you are going to respawn back at the Salem Witch Trials, which you were able to avoid the first time. Next we got My Dear Old Mum.
Oh, this'll be interesting. You're peacefully with your loving son beside you.
And then you will respawn in a Scrooge McDuck vault of gold coins. Last but not least, we got Blue Baron 15.
Of old age, waiting for the final episode of One Piece.
And then you're gonna respawn in the big hole. You don't know if you were ever there in the first place, or how you'll get out, but you do hear the clinking of spoons.
Christ.
Now we're merging them, you see, we're...
how did the big hole get dug in the first place, with the spoons,
Oh, man, adds up. We've just found the origins of both Spoon Man and Big Hole. Thank you all for tuning in. If you want to reach out, whether for a comment, question, feedback, or recommendation, you can tweet us at AnimeConPod on Twitter, or send an email over onto animeoutofcontext@gmail.com.
Once again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. And extra special thanks to Luke for being willing to join us on this very fun episode. If you haven't already, go check out his content. It's great. It's wonderful. I enjoy it. Watching him purely react to some of my favorite shows is just so heartwarming compared to a certain someone I know. But with that, we love you all very, very much. And as always, don't fuck your sister.
Do 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 do.